What we're going to work on today in this video is a cookbook in InDesign. I'm working on Adobe InDesign 2023. It's just going to be a simple layout of this cookbook. So what I have, Command minus, I'm just going to zoom out to show you the overall layout of what I have here. It's pretty consistent looking, pretty simple, but we added a lot of little extra things, so I'm going to talk about that too as we go. So I have my front cover, I have my inside pages, a table of contents, I have pictures, a nice layout, I have all this here. And if I look at my pages panel, I can kind of see what's going on here too. I have my front cover, my inside pages, and I have my back cover. Now what you might notice sometimes with some books is that you're going to design all your collateral, your inside pages here in one document potentially, and then in a separate document you might have like your front cover, a spine, and a back cover in a separate document. But because this is pretty simple, 24 pages, an 8x8 inch cookbook, we could design everything inside one page. It's not too thick, we don't have to worry about that. A little simpler here, which is going to be great. So if I zoom out, that's exactly what I see. That's exactly what we'll lay out. We're going to try to lay out this something similar, but I might play around with it a little bit differently. But we're definitely going to follow a nice layout to keep it simple, grid work, using our master pages and going from there. So let's start that off. So Command N, or File New document. And what I like to focus on over here in this custom area, no presets or anything like that. What I'm going to do right away, I'm going to work in the imperial system in inches. So I got my inches, and I know that the book is an 8x8 inch book. Great. The number of pages, well, there are going to be 24 pages in this book altogether, but I'm not going to start with that right away. I can add those pages later. If I wanted to, yes, 100%, I could put 24 pages. But to start, I'm not going to, because I'm going to add pages as I go, just to show you how the page panel works a little bit more. The orientation is going to be square, so I don't have to worry about that. Facing pages, yes, this is a book. The pages will be facing each other, so we definitely need facing pages on. Start number, primary text frame, I'm not going to worry about. The columns, we are going to work on inside the document. I'm not going to work with that now. The margins, so the minimum amount of margin you need, once again, we're going to play with this inside to the document. The minimum amount of safety you need is 0.125. So I'm just going to start with that, 0.125. Click on the chain so they all become an 1/8 of an inch. The bleed and the slug. Okay, so now the bleed, because once again, it's just an 8x8 book, I once again only need an 1/8 of an inch, 0.125, that's all I need. With the slug line, we're going to add in later. What I need to show here is a 2-inch extra addition to the bottom. So only the bottom is going to have an extra 2 inches. Once we add our slug line in, which I've given you, it's a table I've already prepared. You just have to change a few things in it. We're good to go. We place it in and that's it. So I'm just going to give myself a little area here, which I'll explain the slug line later anyways. And that's it. So I'm good to go. 8x8 inches, one page for now, facing pages, 0.8 of an inch for margin, 1/8 of an inch for bleed, and 2 inch for my slug. And here we go. Great. So let's take a look at a few things here. Number one, I have some of my panels open. I'm going to open up panels as I go. If there's a certain panel you do not have open, you can find any panel under window, and they're all here. Now, if there's still a certain panel you can't see, keep an eye that some of them have arrows, and there's some subset of panels here too you can quickly access if you need to. That's all. So I have my tools open. I have my pages is number one, very important, layers. I'm going to be looking at a bunch of them over here as well, definitely paragraph and character styles. And my control panel, which I always like to have open. It's quick access to certain things. So you might find me going here and changing some things up, or I might be over here changing a few things up. Either way, let's just get started. So number one, what do I see? Well, I see that there's this red line over here on this. That's my bleed line. I could extend some of my ink or some objects to the bleed line to get edge-to-edge ink coverage. But I have a new line down here. This blue line down here is my slug line. That's where I'm going to put my slug line, which I'll explain later. But we do have an area for it, which is great. Awesome. So what I want to do now is I actually want to start playing around with just a layout. The general setup of this, if we get the setup and the layout right, what we can do is move through this cookbook very quickly in a very simple templated setup will help us move along quite nicely and get this done much quicker. So let's look at that. The first thing I want to do is I do want to play around with my margins and columns. So I'm going to do that in my parent or my master page here. So on my pages panel, right now I'm selected on my first page. And if we notice on our first page, we have the letter A, which means it's connected to the A parent. That's great. We're going to play around with that a little bit later too. So right now, what I want to do, I am going to add a couple more pages just to start, because this page is going to be my front cover. Well, I want some inside pages now. So what I could do, I could go to my drop down and insert pages, or I could just click on the plus sign here on the pages panel and plus, and all of a sudden it adds 2 pages. Great. Well, this little line here suggests to me that this is the spine. So obviously I have a page on the right side of the spine and a page on the left side of the spine. Okay, so that's great. So if I zoom out now, what I'll get is my front cover, and I will get my first inside pages, my inside front cover, and here. Normally, we're going to look at a simple layout. This would be your table of contents. This would be something extra you can add there. Obviously, proper book format. There would be some interesting content you'd have at the beginning, and then your content would start, but we're not going to do that for this. We're just going to start off with content right away and utilize all of our pages as best we can. Great. So I have a couple extra pages here. Great. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to set up a structure for my front cover and back cover to have a certain grid layout, and for all my inside pages to have a different grid layout. But let me start, most importantly, which I want you to focus on, is your inside pages. Here in InDesign, what we want to do is focus on how we can control the type, how we have ultimate control over the type in InDesign, and how we can play around with it in the best way possible. So let's get started. On my A parent, right now I see that if I click here, these are selected, but it's actually this area, the highlighted blue, that shows me what's actually selected, what I'm working with. So if I double click on the A parent, now the A parent is selected. So I'm working on the parent, or what we used to call master pages. And it kind of can control the content that can go on all these pages. So if I have many pages and I want to put something on every single one of those pages, instead of putting one thing on all those pages individually, I could actually set up a parent page, and that would show me, I could put something on it and it would appear on every page. So I only have to do it in one area and it's going to show up here. So what I like to do for that, I like to set up my columns, my grid, and set it up here in the parent page. So let's do that. So here I am, I've double clicked it so I know it's blue, and these are highlighted blue as well. I'm going to go to my layout, I'm going to go to margins and columns. So right away I see, yes, that's what I set up earlier. I set my margins to be the minimum 1/8 of an inch safety, just in case. But you know what? What I'm going to do is I'm going to give myself a little bit more space at the top and bottom. I don't want really any important type or anything to be too close to that edge. So I'm actually going to bring this in a little more. But we also have to keep in mind that our inside here, the gutter, the spine, that sometimes when we have a book and you have the content that's too close to the inside edge or the spine, it's kind of hard to read. So I'm going to give myself a little extra space there too. So, but I do love a healthy margin. I'm a big fan of that. So my top, I'm going to bring up a little bit. So you see my top is starting to move. Actually, they're all moving because I have my chain clicked on, my link on. So I'm just going to move that up a little bit. I'm going to give myself some solid numbers here. So let's go 0.25. Once again, you can play around with this. I like to, give myself a little bit more in certain areas. So my inside, so the inside part here, I'm going to give myself a little bit more space. I want to steer clear of the spine. My outside, once again, I'm going to give it a little bit more space. Let's actually make it a simple 0.5, because I do want some extra room to play around with inside when I lay out my type. And my bottom, I'm going to bring it up just a little bit more than the top, because this is going to give us some gravity. It's going to give us a little bit more breathable space in the way we can, visually please the content that we place in, to have a little bit of extra space down here. So I'm just going to do that. And so far that's good. You can obviously bring in your margins if you want to bring them in more. You can keep them more consistent. It's entirely up to you. But for now, I'm happy with this. I'm going to keep it like this. I could always change them later on. But once I already have my layout set up, I probably shouldn't change them too much. The next thing I need to add is my column structure, my grid. And what I like to look at here is I like to think, okay, I can give myself a 2-column grid, a 3-column. And if I'm going to do that, which is fine. So once again, if I just give myself a 2-column grid, that's totally fine. However, I might want to play with this a little bit more and have a little bit more flexible for myself. So what I might do, I just might double that up. So I have more multiples of column structure to work with. So instead of 2, maybe I work with 4. But instead of 3, maybe I work with 6. Now, if we think of like a website grid-like structure there, we could put in 12. And then we have a lot of flexibility, which I really don't want to see, because that is a lot. It could be a little overwhelming to design with too. So for now, I'm just going to give myself 6. And what that will allow me is to use a 3-column structure, or to utilize a simple structure here if I want to put in some interesting pictures or vector graphics or something. I'm just going to keep it like this and kind of see how it goes. But once again, I could always play around with this. Because it's a 6-column structure, what I'm probably going to do is bring down the gutter. The gutter is a little healthy there, which is totally fine. So I'm just going to bring it down a little bit. And just to see, that's a little too thin. So the idea is if I do have content in here and it's butting up next to another text frame and another text frame, I want to make sure that the gutter has enough space in it so they don't like run into each other. They don't look too congested. They have enough space. And I think that 1/8 of an inch is actually kind of nice. And once again, I can always change it. So I'm actually quite happy with that. I press OK, and there's my structure. And once again, because I set it up on my parent page, if I double click and now I'm on my live page number 1, and page 2 and 3, they are connected to the same thing. If I just set up a column structure on this page right here, it would only apply to this column structure, or to this page number 3. So let me change that around and do something extra here and whatever. It only applies to this page. I don't want that. I want it to apply to all my pages because I want my majority of my pages to be consistent. The only pages that are going to change are my front cover and back cover. So you know what? Let's do that right now. And I'm going to label them properly. So I'm going to add a new parent page. So I double click on a parent and I'm going to click on the drop down. I'm going to insert a new parent page, which is here, new parent. Great. I'm going to call it B, but I'm also going to call it, I like keeping the letter there, but the prefix, of course, I'm also going to call this cover. And what I could also do is click on this one here, drop down, and give myself some parent options. And I'm going to call this one inside. Okay, so I have my A inside and my B cover. Great. So what's my B cover going to be? Well, you know what? It could be as simple as that. I don't need the full column structure, probably. Maybe I don't need the full column structure. So I'm just going to give myself a healthy margin. I'm going to go back to layout and margins and columns. Once again, this is just for my front cover and back cover. I'm just going to say, you know what, let's make it 0.5 for whatever reason, just to give myself a little bit more of a border there. And I don't need the full column structure because maybe I'm just going to put a picture in and some type. If I look back at the other one I've already done here, that's all I really did. A title, maybe a subtitle, and the name, your name on this. So that's a minimum. I need one title and a name. That's it. The rest could be fun, engaging pictures. But once again, it has to be something engaging and interesting, or else it's just, not going to work in terms of judge a book by its cover type situation. So done. Now what I can do, because currently right now the front cover, which is page 1, is still connected to the A. So if I double click on it, it still has that column structure. So what I need to do very easily is just click and drag and apply it to the first page. So I'm going to apply the B master page or parent page. I'm just going to click and drag and bring it on, and now it says B, so it's connected to the B master page or parent page. I double click, yes, I see that column structure that I had, which is actually no columns, one column with a decent margin, is now connected to that. Done. Beautiful. My master pages are complete. I'm happy with that, and that looks okay. Now the next thing I can do is set up my structure. So in kind of like a placeholder, I'm going to create a template for myself. And this is the best thing you can do. Instead of trying to design 24 different pages or 10 different spreads, that's all I'm going to do is design one spread really, really well, duplicate it, and then fill in the content. It's the fastest and easiest way to work with this. And you'll be done in no time, which will save you more time to play around with design and have some fun with layout. So normally, as I mentioned, front cover, this is my inside cover, which I might put some graphics or something interesting in there. I'm not going to really utilize this page too much, but of course you can. This is the fun part, design it any way you want. The third page more than likely will be my table of contents, which is what I'm going to save that for. So if I add a few more pages, 1, 2, this is now my first proper spread. And once again, if I am doing the recipe, I am doing a cookbook, more than likely it's going to look something like this. I'm going to have a title, a picture, and the recipe. Very simple. Now, yes, of course, you can go above and beyond and play around with obviously a background. And obviously we're going to play around with a lot of hierarchy and different things of type. And I'm going to show you how to do that. But let's just play basically and throw a picture in and the recipe. And that's all. Let's see what we can do there. Well, I also noticed it's untitled, so what I should do is probably start right away and name this properly. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to start a new folder. And I'm going to call it, let's say cookbook or whatever book you had. And if this is the assignment, maybe you want to name it the name of the assignment as well. Assignment 1, assignment 2, assignment 3, whatever you want to do, but definitely organize your folder, organize your files. I'm going to create my new folder. And of course I'm working on a Mac, so this is how I do it here. So I'm just on my desktop, cookbook, done. Now that's my folder. Great. Well, what kind of file is this? I'm going to make a new folder, and this is going to be my INDD folder, my InDesign folder. Great. So I'm going to continue with that. And once again, we're just going to do this last name, first initial, section number, whichever it happens to be, and book. And I'm a huge fan of putting in the 3 letter form for the month I'm working on it, the month I started, and the year it's in. And this happens to be January 2023. If you're watching this video later on, maybe potentially Adobe is updated and it's a different version, that's fine. But hopefully a lot of this will be foundational for you, so you could use it anytime, many, many years down the road. Okay, so here I am. That's my InDesign file. I'm going to save, done, awesome. Here I go. So now what I want to do, I want to focus on the actual layout. Let's just put in some placeholder information for now. So I'm going to grab, see, I don't really like using the frame. I love just using the rectangle tool, because any shape you put in here becomes a frame. And because InDesign only works with frames, I never really use this frame tool. I just use the rectangle tool. Or of course, if I right click or long click, I can get the ellipse tool and the polygon tool, but usually use the rectangle tool. So let's pretend I'm going to put my placeholder from edge to edge of the bleed and to the spine. That's going to be my picture. Just like I did here, that's my picture. That's where I'm going to put it. Great. And it's green for some reason. I must have had my swatch panel set up a certain way, and that's okay. I'm going to open it up, and there it is. And I'm just going to make it black. There we go. It's black, 100%, perfect. That's going to be the area where I'm going to have a picture. And once again, I'm going to press the keyboard command W, and what it does, it gives me preview mode, and I can see exactly what it's kind of going to look like. But I obviously like to work with my preview off, so I could see a lot what's going on here. So all said and done, beautiful. So what I want to do is now I want to start laying out my type, my content, which is obviously super important. What I'm going to do here is I'm actually going to take my recipes that I have for this particular book, and I'm going to make a new folder in my cookbook like I just had, and I'm going to make a resources folder, and I'm going to place in the recipes that I have for this particular cookbook. They're going to paste in quite nicely. All right, so all my recipes are in. So once again, you do want to organize your folder in a certain way. So if you want to have all your pictures that you're going to work with, you could put them in your resources. You could put your pictures in here. You could put the fonts maybe you want to work with. The least I'm going to need here is I'm going to need a final folder, because that's where I'm going to put my final PDF. And I'm going to need a links folder, because if I'm bringing in any raster graphics, I want to link them. I don't want to embed them in InDesign. There's going to be too many, so I want to link them in so it makes my file size nice and small, and I can work with it from there. So either way, back in InDesign, what I'm going to do to start, I'm going to have a placeholder area. So I'm going to grab my text tool, and I'm just going to click and drag. We're just going to play around, and this is going to be my title. So I'm just going to type in title. That's fine. What I'm also going to know is that if I look at any normal cookbook, there's an area for ingredients and an area for instructions or directions. So I just click and drag another text frame or copy that one. And this one will be, I'm just going to put some placeholder text in here for now. So I'm going to get rid of that. If I double click inside of my text frame here, I'm going to right click and I can go to fill with placeholder text, or you can go up to type and the same idea, fill with placeholder text. And it's just going to give me some lorem ipsum, and that's totally fine. And once again, I could duplicate that, hold on Option and Shift, and I'll duplicate it there. And let's pretend this is going to be my area where I'm going to have the instructions or the directions. I can lay this out any way I want, and just by using some placeholder text, I can already start setting up my paragraph styles to look a certain way. And when I'm done, that's all I have to do is copy and paste in my actual recipe, and it's going to fill in perfectly. It's already going to have the paragraph style connected to it. It's going to be great. But instead of using lorem ipsum here, you know what? Because I actually do have some recipes to use, which is right here, I'm actually going to take one. And now the idea here, the best kind of situation to work with is to actually take a recipe that's probably your longest recipe, because it's easier to lay out a recipe that's small than it is one that's really big. So I would take my longest one. I'd find my longest one and kind of say, okay, I'm going to work with this one because it's a long one. And it's a little, like I said, it's a little easier to work with the hardest one first instead of the shortest one. So for me, I think this one's pretty long, so I'm going to take this one, open it up, double click, and I open it up in Text Edit in Mac. I'm just going to copy it. So I know that this is the title. I'm going to copy the title, Command C, go back into InDesign, Command V. Good. Go back to my text edit document. I did have a little tagline, which I do want to use, so I'm going to use that as well. So I'm just going to make this a little bit smaller, duplicate it, Option and Shift, and I'm going to select and paste in my little tagline. Back to here again, of course, my ingredients. Okay, I have quite a few ingredients. So I'm going to select, double click inside the text frame, Command A, which is select all, and then Command V, which is going to paste over top of all of that. One last time, instructions, copy this, great, and I'm only going to do that. There are some disclaimers which I could show later, but I'm more focused on the main part of this content, and Command V, and there I go, I could see it all. The way to do that is a fitting. So right now I can see, if I zoom in, and what I can see here is this little plus sign here, and the little plus sign is suggesting to me that there is more content inside of this frame than the frame can see right now. So if I just bring down the frame, make the frame a little bit bigger, I could see the rest of that content. Now, there it is, the red symbol is gone, the red plus sign is gone, that's totally fine. Another way in this situation I might be able to work with this is connecting or linking the text frames. And more than likely you won't have to do this in this cookbook, but some of you might do a different style of cookbook and might need some text frames to flow properly. So let's even pretend I brought this up and I made this a 2-column structure. Let's just pretend. Well, I need to make sure I can see the rest of the content. So I'm going to click on this plus sign. So this is how we can link text frames. I'm going to click on the plus sign. And now my cursor is saying, okay, you have the rest of the content that can't be seen. Where do you want to put it? Well, I'm just going to click and drag using my column structure, another text frame. And obviously I have my smart guides on, so you can see all these little green arrows and everything. InDesign's trying to help me line things up, which is great. And there is the text flow. So these two frames, yes, they're separate, but they are connected, meaning if I select all the type, Command A, both text frames, all that type will be connected. So now that they're linked, I can select everything, and it's just going to make it a lot easier. Now, realistically, in InDesign, the fewer text frames, the better. You want to have it so you can select all the content much easier. It helps with paragraph styles. It helps with everything. So realistically, I have one just for my title, one for maybe a little tagline. I have one for the content, my ingredients, and one for my instructions or my directions, and I'm totally fine with that. So I'm happy with that. So now what I can do is I can start playing around with, well, a little bit of layout, but playing around with my paragraph styles. And this is a big one right here. Okay, so let's start looking at paragraph styles. What paragraph styles are going to do is something similar that the master or parent pages do. I can change something in one area and it's going to affect the type in a lot of different areas. So let's look at what that is exactly. Okay. So I'm going to click open my paragraph styles, and I'm going to focus on paragraph styles first, and then I'm going to talk about character styles later and how they work together. So as you noticed right here, I have a basic paragraph style. When you open up your type or do anything in InDesign, there's already a style established, and the style is Minion Pro regular. Well, for me, it's Minion Pro regular, 12-point type, 14.4 point leading. I have metric kerning, I have zero tracking. So this is the style that's already predetermined by, or the default in InDesign, which is great. So this is the style. Clearly, I don't want the style. I want to change that style up. Not a problem. There's two ways to do it. I'm going to show you the one way here. So we can already start creating the style and then we add the style, or we can start with the style and then connect it to the type. Either way, this is the way I'm going to start with it. So I'm going to select this type. Actually, let's start with the title. I select the title. Well, what do I want the title to look like? Well, number one, maybe I do want kind of some interesting, as I did here, maybe I do want some nice, script typeface or something a little bit more bold to stand out. However you want to do it, it doesn't really matter, but more than likely the title will be a little bit bigger. So let me choose a typeface here and just kind of have some fun with it. Nothing too overwhelming. Even if I chew this one, this is fine. Where'd that go? Ananda. All right, great. And now that is my new style, Ananda regular. Well, let me make it a little bit bigger. Now I do have to keep in mind some of my titles will be smaller, some of my titles will be bigger, longer, so I got to keep that in mind too, but I can always play around with it, and that is the beauty of paragraph styles. Let's say for now 30-point type. It's already going to give me a 20% leading, which is totally fine. Metric, I'm going to keep it all as is, and I'm going to keep it black for now too. We're going to talk about color a little bit later. So here I am with my type. I love it. This is my title. All right, so what I'm going to do with this, very simply, I'm going to make this a paragraph style. And this is very important because this is also going to help us out with our table of contents later as well. So I strongly recommend you do this. This is an important part of it. So I have my title, and right now it's showing the basic paragraph I originally had has a little plus sign here. That means the original paragraph has been changed outside of the paragraph style. That's okay, that's great. So I select it. I'm going to click on the plus sign because I'm going to create a new style, or I can go to the drop down and create a new style, new paragraph style. So there it is. Actually, I'm going to cancel that because I already have this selected. I'm going to plus, and it's going to automatically create the style here from what it has here. That's all I have to do. It calls it paragraph style 1. So what I am going to do, and what's very important, is you should structure your paragraph styles in terms of the hierarchy. So if you have a title, that's at the top, and then a subtitle, and maybe a heading and subheading, and then body, and then maybe disclaimer. So you would structure yourself very simply with paragraph styles. So I'm just going to double click on paragraph style, and what that does, it gives me so many beautiful options I can change with my paragraph style. Now remember, paragraph styles is where you control a lot of type. Like a paragraph is obviously many, more than one sentence, or however that goes. It's not just individual characters. That's what character styles are for. So the first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to style it. I'm going to call this my title, but I'm actually probably going to call it my recipe title because I might have other titles somewhere else, or the front cover title. So I'm just going to call this recipe title. So it's good to be descriptive. It's not based on any other paragraph styles because I don't have any. And generally, I don't like to do that anyways. I like to keep everything on their own, clean, simple. So if I go to my basic character formats, I see it's already pulled my current style, Ananda, regular, 30-point, great. What else can I do? I could look at advanced character formats, don't need to touch them. Indents and spacing, it's a title, I don't have to worry about that. There's so many different things I can do here, but I'm going to work on those later when I get to this content here. So that's it. I'm happy with the paragraph style. I've set it up. Okay, there it is. Now, any title I have moving forward on any of my recipes, I'm going to connect it to this recipe title. Perfect. Okay, next. Well, now here I want to focus on maybe my main typeface that I'm going to use. So I want it to be, maybe I'm going to have a subtitle where it's going to be a sans serif, and then my actual content will be a serif typeface. So let's kind of work with that. So here's another one. Very simple. I'm going to select the type again. I'm going to go to another typeface. I have my filter on for scripts that I don't want. I'm just going to clear them all. And now all my types shows up. And let's say I'm going to focus on Gotham. I do love using Gotham, and I'm going to use Gotham Narrow. So I click on Gotham Narrow. That's my typeface. I'm going to click on the font, and let's just say it's going to be, doesn't really matter. Let's go light italic for whichever reason. I'll make it a little bit bigger, have it stand out. And once again, I can always play around with the color and change these anytime I want. But right now, I'm just creating paragraph styles that I want to see throughout my book. And I'm going to connect them to all the type later on, which is really, really easy to do. So here's my second paragraph style. I'm going to click on it. And there it is. I clicked it, I added it, and here it goes, paragraph style 1. So I double click on it. Well, you know what? Once again, in terms of hierarchy, this is not the title. So let's just say this is a subtitle, or maybe even this one's a tagline. Maybe you don't have a tagline. That's totally fine. I'm just going to throw this out here and leave it alone. Actually, you know what? Just to be on the safe side, maybe I will call it subtitle. So I keep in the structure of my hierarchy. Subtitle, great. So I'm just going to once again look at my basic, it's not connected to anything, basic character formats. Yep, Gotham narrow, light italic, 15 point. Maybe I could play around with this later. I'm not too concerned about that right now. Great, and I don't really have to do anything else because it's just one line, not a big deal. I'm just gonna say, okay, done. Well, and what I can do here, because I want my recipe title always to be at the top because it's the main hierarchy here. So I'm just gonna click and drag and bring it to the top, and that's it. Now, if I accidentally click on it, it's going to change that type to this recipe title, which is, I don't want that. I want it to be subtitle. So you gotta be sure, if you click on something accidentally, you could always click back and change the paragraph style it's connected to, but you do have to connect your type to a paragraph style. Now let's go to the little bit more challenging, a little bit more involved, the ingredients. So number one, what I should probably do is call this ingredients. And what I've noticed in the past when I've done this is I will make another text frame, just duplicate that, or I could just roll out, drag out another text frame. I'm just going to call this one ingredients. And some of these things, of course, are a given. Of course, these are the ingredients. Do I really need a title? You know what? The title helps. What I want to do here is I notice that my text frame is really long. All right. And of course I could shrink it down just like this and I could bring it up, but there's another way to do that, and that's called fitting. And what I can do is I can right click on the text frame and I can go to fitting, and I could fit the frame to the content, meaning the frame is going to kind of shrink itself to the content, which is great. I could also do that here, and I could also find it under object, fitting, and fit frame to content, and it kind of just fits it. Now, the way I like to design with type is, you notice that it didn't fully go all the way up to the word minutes. Well, why did that happen? Here's what I love to do in InDesign. It's very important that we always have full control over the type. So what I do is I'm going to go to type and I'm going to show my hidden characters. There's a bunch of hidden characters here, and I love designing this way so I can see everything that's going on. And the reason why the text frame did not go all the way, because there is a hard return here. Okay, great. So these blue characters are hidden characters. There's all the little blue ones here. Those signify spaces. This number sign or hashtag or pound sign signifies the end of the content. So if I got rid of this now, and I brought this up, great. And I'll do the same here. I'm going to do a fitting, but I'm going to use the keyboard shortcut, Option Command C, and now it fits to it, which is great. I'm a big fan of that. I like to fit that content. And if it does go over, once again, that red plus sign shows up telling me, oh, there's more content inside that frame. Not a big deal. I could just make it bigger. Getting back to this. So I have my ingredient title set up, and I'm going to drag it over, hold on Option and Shift, and I'm going to call this, let's call this directions. So this will give me the directions to set this up. Let's focus on the ingredients for now, because I want to structure these a very specific way. Very similar to what I've done here, where I'm going to have a bullet, and I'm going to have the content, but the content's going to align very nicely, very cleanly with a nice tab here, and it's going to create its own line. It's going to be very clean looking. And then what we can do later is also number our steps. I'm going to show you how to do that as well. So let's start with the ingredients. Well, number one, I select my content and I'm going to make, once again, a new paragraph. So let's do that. So this one I'm doing a little bit differently. Instead of already styling it, I'm going to actually start it right away, and I'm going to create a new style right away inside the paragraph style panel. So I'm going to call this is going to be my ingredient body. It's not based on anything. So let's start structuring right here. I have my preview on so I could see what's actually going to change live. So I'm at Minion Pro once again. I'm going to go to Gotham, and I'm going to Gotham narrow. That's what I want. I'll start with regular, which is totally fine. I'm going to keep that. Gotham book, Gotham narrow book, which is great. I'm going to remember, I want to keep my typeface relatively small. Let's keep it at 8.5, between 8.5 and 10. I can always change it, but I should really realistically kind of keep it at a decent spot and play with it as I go from there. So I'm going to say right now, I'm going to keep it at 9. Great. My leading will change. That's not a problem. I can always increase my leading. I do like to increase my leading for readability, especially we got to think about the functionality of the cookbook. People are going to be reading this book. They're going to be maybe laying it down on their counter and actually performing the task of making this particular recipe. So keep in mind that maybe the type could be a little bit bigger, or maybe it could be spaced out a little bit better for readability. So it's always not a bad idea to think of as we do this. Okay. So 9-point type, I got a 12-point leading. I can mess around with the kerning and tracking, but I'm not going to do that. I'm fine with that. Advanced character features, I don't like messing around with. Indents and spacing, it's left align. I'm fine with that. Tabs. Now, I'm not actually going to work with the tabs. I'm going to work with bullets and numbering, which is actually going to affect the tabs, which I'll show you later. I'm not too worried about some of these other ones. I'm just going to more or less focus right now on bullets and numbering. So let's do that. So I go over to bullets and numbering, and what do I see? This is where the kind of magic happens with our ordered list. So right now the list type is none. So I do want to make it bullets. I'm going to do numbers later for the directional. So I'm going to click on bullets. Oh, right away, I see my bulleted list. Well, it doesn't look great right now, does it? It's really far away. So let's clean that space up, but let's do a few different things first. Well, number one, the glyphs or the characters that are a part of this particular typeface, Gotham Narrow, this is the bullet. And there's nothing wrong with this bullet. I could also change it to this asterisk if I wanted to, or this, or this, or this, whatever. But you know what? I do like a cleaner, a smaller bullet, a middle dot. So what I can do, instead of using this bullet, I can actually add, and this brings me up to my glyphs panel that is specific to the font, or the typeface I'm using, actually the font I'm using, and I can find and go pick anything else I want that belongs to that font. Well, there's a middle dot here. I'm going to add that, just add. And there's also another middle dot up here. Oh, that's the decimal, that's a period. I figured that shouldn't be at the top. So that's the middle dot I want. I'm going to use that as a bullet. I'm just going to say okay, and there it is. And now if I click on it, now that's my bullet. I like that. It's a little smaller bullet. Correct, it's not the right one to use, but I like it's a little cleaner. So use that middle dot. Well, automatically, when I did click on bullet, the text after added a tab. That's the code for a tab. If I click on it again, I see this little arrow here. I click on it, I can make a tab. Now, there's already a tab there, so it didn't do it. If I do erase it, I can add the tab back in, and there it is. All right, character style, none. There's no character styles. I can play with those later. So here is something that happens as well. Now, once again, the type is far away from the bullet. I don't like that. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to increase the left indent and take away the first line indent. And what that did, it changed my tab position as well. The tab position was originally 0.5. And now if I look at this, it's very clean, very nice looking, but I'm going to show you something else that happened that you can't just see just yet, but it's going to be really, really nice. So if I'm done. This is great. It looks really good. I'm happy with it. But if I go up now to my tabs, I'll notice something happened here. My indent moved over, but it's all clean looking, this nice line here. So this is exactly what happened, and it's going to look great. And here's the best part about this. I'm going to press OK. If I have a situation where I'm going to type in one egg, and I'm just going to put in some extra content here, as soon as it returns, it's actually still going to continue aligning with the type. It's not going to go under the bullet. It's going to continue aligning, and that's exactly what we want. And that's how we work with our bullets. So I'm a big fan of that. All right. So I'm more or less set up here. I'm going to press W to look at the preview. Looking good. I love how clean that looks. That's great. All right, so there is my ingredient body. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to drag that to the bottom because that's now in hierarchy. That's less. Perfect. And now my ingredients and directions, let's play with these two. So I'm going to select that. I'm going to click on the plus sign. I'm going to make a new style. I'm just going to call this my subheading, if you will, or I can call it ingredients. Maybe I have a different paragraph style for directions, so maybe I want to change that up. It's whatever you want to do, but for realistically, subheading, once again, what am I changing it to? I'm going to change it to Gotham Narrow. There it is, regular. Maybe for this one I want it to be a little bit different looking, so I will go bold. And what happened? Well, it disappeared because obviously the content got bigger than the frame. That's okay. That red plus sign is there. Not a big deal. I could change that later. Actually, no, let's change it now so I can actually see what it looks like. I'll say okay. I'll make it a little bit bigger. The frame, done. And now I could see it. Oh, that looks great. I'm happy with that. But I could always, once again, I don't even have to click on the content. I don't have to click on anything. If nothing is selected, I can just go back to subheading. I'm going to bring it down here. and I'm going to play around with it again. Maybe I do want to make it a little bit bigger, maybe not, doesn't matter. Just to show you, I don't even have to select the type in order for the paragraph style to work, and that's the beauty of it. So right now it looks fine. I'm not going to change too much. I'll play around with some of these things after. You know what? Here's the next best thing about paragraph styles. So not only did I set up my paragraph styles, I can now connect the paragraph styles to some type, and they're going to work together. So this one, I'm going to say it's the same as subheading. There it is, done. Okay, well, you know what? I actually don't like subtitle and subheading. I don't like the way that they're named, so I am going to call this one tagline. I double click on it. I'm going to say tagline. Cool. You, like I said, you might not have them. Nothing really changed. I just have them as is. Not a problem. Okay, so I have a bunch of paragraph styles laid out. Great. Now, what about this content? This content, once again, I want it to look like this, but I want it to be numbered. So let's start from scratch and let's do that again. What I am going to do is I am actually going to delete that frame. I'm not too worried about the text frame flowing. I'm just going to open up this frame a little bit more and drop this down so I can see everything. Once again, yours might be different looking. You might have a really large recipe to work with, but remember, do not go smaller than 8.5 point, but try not to go bigger than 10 point or 11 point. That's too big. If you do notice that when you print it off, it's too big. This is actually nice looking if we were to print it off. So I'm going to select my type. I'm going to start from scratch again. So I go to my plus sign here, and I'm going to start over. I'm going to double click on paragraph style 1 because that's what I clicked when I said the plus sign. That's what it made. And I'm going to call this now, instead of it being ingredient body, I'm going to call this direction body. Awesome. Okay, no paragraph is not connected on anything or based on anything. I could have based it on this and just changed up the numbering, but I'm going to start from scratch again just to show you. So basic character formats. Once again, I'm going to make this Gotham narrow regular. Let's go 8.5, or did I do 9? I did 9. And my leading, I made it a little bit bigger. But once again, I'm just going to play around with it a little bit later on. I can move this anytime I want. Advanced character formats, nothing. Indents and spacing, nothing. Tabs. I'm just going to go to my bullets and numbering, but instead of a bullet, I want to number it. I want to go, step by step kind of idea. And that's great. Well, something happened here. Obviously, once again, it pushed really far away from the numbering. That's okay. But as I added that, not only did it add a tab position, but it also added this other code here. And if you notice, there was a decimal here earlier. And what it does, it just adds that decimal to the number. If you want it, keep it. If you don't, not a problem. That's part of the little code there. So what it's saying is that there is a space and then there's a tab. Okay, number and then a tab, not a space. So that's the numbering. So I could change the format of my numbering to this or to this style or whatever I want. I could use letter forms. I'm just going to stay with my 1, 2, 3, 4. And obviously it uses the format of the typeface I chose. The character style, I don't have a character style. I'm totally fine with all that. So what I want to do now is I want to do the same thing I did earlier, is I want to bring this type a little bit closer back and kind of keep that same spacing there. So I'm just going to bring this up to 0.125, bring this back to 0.125, negative 0.125, and now look, I have a very clean looking situation here. But I do have a problem here which I need to address. But it looks good. I'm happy with it. Let's go figure this out. I'm going to press OK. Good. There is a problem, but it's good that I can see my hidden characters because this is what's going to solve this problem. Right now, when I pressed enter, anytime I press enter, because of the way I've set up my paragraph style, anytime I press enter, it's going to add another number. Every time you press a hard return, the paragraph style is saying, oh, you have a hard return. That means I need to add a bullet or add a number. Well, that's not what I want exactly. Sorry, it is what I want, but I do need to play with this a little bit differently. Okay, because right here, how is that a step? It's not a step at all, but there is a return. So what I could do, I could obviously get rid of the return. That's fine. However, I'm thinking, well, wait a second. I do want space between each number. I want a bit of space. I want at least one return in between each to space it out a little bit. That's not a bad idea. So what if I press enter? Well, once again, if I just press enter, it shows up the number 2, but no, that's not a step number. This is the step number 2. So the way to work around this, instead of pressing enter, What I'm going to do is I'm going to have a soft return. This is a hard return. Let me zoom in a little bit more. This is a hard return. I'm going to add in a soft return. A soft return is when you press Shift Enter, and what it does not break up. Oh, sorry, I don't want to do that there. I actually wanted to do it right there. So what I'm going to do, instead of pressing Enter here, I'm going to go right before it, and I'm going to press a soft return. Shift Enter. And what it does, it adds a soft return here, brings it back down here. It does not add a number or a bullet, but it just adds my hard return here, and I can continue on like that. So let me do that again. Right in front of the hard return, I'm going to press my soft return, and a soft return, and so on. And it does not add a number. What it does break up the paragraph, but it does not add it as a hard return. It allows me to continue without adding that extra bullet point there, which is great. So now, if I look at it, now it has that nice clean look, that nice straight line, just like here, and this is looking very clean. And look at how well I controlled my type just by using some paragraph styles and playing around. Okay, great. Well, now what I want to look at are our character styles. Character styles. Now, if I look at this right away, it's looking clean. I have a nice control here. Yes, I'm probably going to play with the position of my title and maybe this, like once again, the way I did it here. I put my title here, I put a little bar behind it, I put it on top of the picture, added some contrast to make sure the type plays off of the picture. I could have obviously brought the picture, this over here and played around with it somehow. Here was my tagline that I used, and I added some color and played around with it a little bit more. There's so much you could do, but this is as basic as we need to be, and then you could play around like crazy. Once your template is set up, you can do anything you want. It's really, really easy to play this way. So I did a little fitting there. So what I can do now is play around with character styles. Well, what are character styles compared to paragraph styles? Character styles allow me to work with inside the paragraph style because I already have a paragraph style set up. So what I could do now is add a character style. I'm going to actually move this panel over so I can see it separately from paragraph styles. And I'm going to now individually change up potentially something inside of a paragraph style. So if I look at this, what it offers me is this. So here I italicized this and I added color to this one, and same here. Maybe I bolded something. So here I bolded something. Those are also character styles. So within the paragraph style, I was able to make some changes. So let's do that for recommended. And you'll notice there's a bullet, but these two actually belong together. Let's fix that. Let's go click off of our preview so I can see all my hidden characters. And I'm just going to click back on this, but instead of that, and I kind of don't like the way it's split up, that's not a problem. I can just, once again, soft return, Shift Enter. And what it does, it doesn't add another bullet, it just pushes it down to the next line without adding that extra bullet, which is great. So that's a soft return, Shift Enter. So what I'm going to do, I want this to be italicized. Well, of course, I can italicize it right here. I could say, you know what, it's going to be book italic. Good, that's fine. But if you notice here now, in my paragraph style, there's a little plus sign. And the plus sign suggests that something was changed outside of the paragraph style. That's not the worst thing in the world. However, I kind of don't want to teach you that. What I'd like to teach you is to play around with paragraph styles and character styles. So what I can do, I'm going to add a character style to change that italicized. So I'm just going to press plus. I'm going to add a new character style. I'm just going to call it italic. Cool. You know what, to be on the safe side, let's be a little more descriptive. I'm going to call it ingredient italic because maybe I want to put in a different italic somewhere else, whatever, it doesn't matter. So basic character formats. Once again, I'm going to go Gotham, narrow, and book italic. And I'm not going to touch the size. I'm not going to touch anything else. If I do not touch these, that means it's just going to keep it the same as the paragraph style. If I change up the size, well, guess what? It's going to change the size of it. But if I don't change the size, what it will do, sorry, let me actually click on that again. I'm going to preview it as well so we could see it. Oh, there it is. It looks good. If I don't touch any of these, nothing else will change. It's totally fine. So it's just going to pull, it's just going to change these few things I added, which really was just book italic. That's all it changes. The more I change here, the more it's going to change the paragraph style, but I don't need it to. I'm just going to press OK. Great. I'm happy with it. Beautiful. I'm going to change this up a little bit more later too, but in the meantime, I'm happy with this just to show you one character style for now. The other thing I might want to do is also play around with the leading here, potentially to really connect these two together so the bullets aren't too close to each other, but even if they are, and one does go to a second line, I could really show that these two are connected. So let me do that really quickly. So once again, I'm just going to not even click on the type or the text frame. I'm going to go to my paragraph style. I'm going to go to my ingredient body. Oh, direction body. I should have brought that down. There it is. So now I have that nice hierarchy. You know, it really bothers me when this isn't consistent. Lowercase r, lowercase t. Okay, good. So now what I can do on my ingredient body with nothing selected, I just double click on it. And I'm going to say, you know what, I want a little bit of extra leading on my ingredients. Not a problem. That's fine. I'll say, okay. The plus sign is there, meaning the content is larger than the frame. Not a problem. I'll do a quick little fitting, fit frame to content, and it shows me the rest of it. But once again, it's kind of odd looking that this line that is connected to this line is still the same distance as everything else, leading. So I'm just going to select that. And I'm just going to bring up the leading. I'm going to do it manually. All right, so now that the leading is a little tighter, I see, yes, these two are connected a little bit closer and everything else is still different, which is totally fine. And it's ideal if you are copying and pasting content from online, it's a good idea to go through the actual recipe that you took, that you're utilizing, and just to clean it up a little bit, just in case there's some things that are kind of out of whack or kind of that don't make sense. So it's always a good idea to go through that content before you actually go get it printed. All right, great. So this is looking good. I'm happy with this. Next, what I can do is I'm going to start structuring my layers. I'm going to organize my layers because I kind of have quite a bit here already, but I could always add more layers later on too. But I am going to go to my layers panel, which once again, if you can't see it, window, layers, and there it is. So I have layer 1. Great. So let's call that something. Let's call it picture. Okay. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to select this, and it's already on there. Obviously, everything's already on there. So I'm good. So now I'm going to make a new layer, and I'm going to call it my type layer. And there's my type layer, but I'm going to select all my type, and I'm going to now go to my picture layer, and I see that something is selected here. I'm going to click on this blue square, and I'm just going to click and drag and bring it up to my new type layer, and I'm going to bring it here, and now it's all on the type layer. So I have type that is hidden now, and I have picture that is hidden now, and this is a great way to structure your layer panel. So if you just want to work on work on a picture, you could lock the type so the type doesn't move. Or if you just want to work on the type and you know there's pictures underneath and you don't want to move it, you just work. It's a great way to play, and believe me when I tell you, organize your layers. You're going to be super thankful later on. Well, you know what? I might need some more layers, but we're going to work on those later when we actually start putting these together. I do want to mention something here, and I feel this is very important to talk about because a lot of designers, especially first-time designers, do this, and there's always a way around it to make it look better. The one thing you kind of don't want to do, which I see it all the time, let's move this around a little bit. I'm going to put the type over there. I'm going to put the tagline over here. And what some people like to do, because I always kind of mess with it too quite a bit, is I'm going to add some background flavor, just a little bit of color or whatever. For now, I'm going to keep everything black and white. I like to start foundationally black and white and add color in later, and I'll show you how to do that. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to add a rectangle, and I'm just going to make it black for now. I'm going to click and drag and bring it down, and I'm going to use my grid structure, my 2-column structure, and put it in there. Great. Let me lower the tint of it, or I could also lower the opacity of it if I wanted to, but I'm going to lower the tint of it. So I'm going to bring the tint down to, like, say 50%. Well, obviously it is on top of the type, so to arrange it properly, I could just go to Object and Arrange, Send to Back, which I used to use the shortcuts for that, the keyboard shortcuts. Okay, this is fine. However, if I click on my preview, this is not good. When the type touches the border of something, there's tension there. It's not pleasing to look at. We don't want that. Well, obviously there's a couple ways to work around this. Of course, I could just select both and move them over, but I don't like doing that either because I'm not really utilizing my grid structure that I've used. To use it properly, it should be aligned to the grid. Well, there's another way to work with this, to push it away from that edge, but still keep the text frame aligned to the grid. So how do I do that? Well, it's called the text frame option, and these are somewhat advanced features, but there's a lot you could do with these, which is great. I'm going to click on my frame. I'm going to go to my object and text frame options, and it shows up here. Great. So what can I do with text frames options? There actually are a bunch of advanced options. The only one I'm really concerned about right now is to go to general and inset spacing. So what that allows me to do, it allows me to push the content inside the text frame and add some padding to it. So right now, the only thing I want to push is from my left side. So I'm going to click off the chain, the link, and I just want to push the content over. So the text frame is still aligned to the grid, but now I have a little bit of padding here. If I could add more, I could add more. If I could add less, I could add less. And what that does, it allows me to push the content over, but still keep my text frame aligned to the grid. Great. So I'm going to do the same with this here. But once again, if you're not doing this, you don't have to worry about it, but it is an advanced feature that I do enjoy using. So text frame option is also Command B. So I'm going to do the same thing here. 0.125, or was it 0.125? Let's see. I'm going to bring it over just a little bit more and keep it equal to what I had there. Great. And that's it. Done. Text frame options, very useful. So now if I shut that off, it's not touching the edge, it's not touching the border, and I get this nice, structured column in here. If I want to use it, if I want to bring it to the bleed, I can bring it to the bleed. Of course, what you should not do is ever leave a content like this just hanging out on the paper edge, because that's not the way we use the bleed. You either bring it into your margin or bring it all the way to the bleed. Never leave content like this, type, graphic elements, pictures just hanging on the paper edge, because if you print it, it's not going to print out properly. You might actually end up with like a little white edge there from the paper. So either send it to the bleed line, extend it to the bleed line, or bring it into your margin. Whatever you want to do, it's your design choice. So just to show you that, I feel that that's really important to talk about, because I always see students, designers in general, having their type, touch the actual frame, which is not a great way to play with it. Really quickly, I am going to remove that. I want to show you what you could also do. This is a frame, and because it's a frame, that means I'm actually able to color the frame. So I can add a stroke to it. Remember, this is the stroke. So the stroke is active. I can make it black. So now there's a black stroke. Obviously not great looking, because once again, the type is touching. It's getting cut off a little bit. The readability is not great. There's tension, not cool. The other thing, of course, I could do is make the the fill a different color too. Let's just use one of these. Oh, I didn't have it selected. I'm going to select that and make it cyan. So it is a frame, so therefore I could color it. I changed the color of it, but obviously this doesn't look good. So let's even go back to the idea of that inset. So now I could change up the top, add some space to the top. If I needed to change space to the bottom and the right, I could have. So just another way to show you how to play around with frames. So instead of me having a separate element and the type frame, I actually have just one type frame that I play around with the color, just to show you the option. I often don't use it this way, but of course you can if you wanted to, just to show you that. Okay, great. So I'm back here, it's looking good. Once again, I could lay it out any way I want. Maybe I'll align it more this way with directions. If I want to center it, I could center it. It's entirely up to me, it's entirely up to you, what you want to do. Now, what I will do here next is I am going to add in my page numbering. Before I bring in a picture, before I do this, I'm going to play around with this a little bit. The page numbering aspect is so fast and quick and easy in InDesign, and you don't have to do it manually, and I don't want you to do it manually. It does it automatically for you, and here's how you do it. We're going to go up to our pages. Our master page here, our inside. I'm going to click on that. And what I'm going to do here, I'm going to see that I want to add a page numbering to my master page inside. And what it's going to do, it's going to automatically populate all the page numbering here. So I'm going to press W so I could see my column structure. It's all I have to do. I'm going to click once again on my inside master page, click on my text tool. I'm going to click and drag roughly where I might want to put my page numbering. And instead of putting anything in there, I'm going to go up to Type, Insert Special Character, Markers, and Current Page Number. And that's it. It adds the letter A. Well, A is based on the A inside, but also you may have noticed it's connected right now to my ingredient body. And that's okay, but I do want to connect it to a paragraph style. That's not a bad idea. So maybe I'll choose one here. Oh, that's not bad. Well, that's not bad. Actually, I do like that one. I don't have to. I can make a new one, and you know what? Let's do that. I'm going to select it. I'm going to make a new paragraph style. I'm going to call it page number. And let's just give it a quick little style. So yeah, Gotham bold was great. Maybe it's a little too big, so maybe we'll go like a 9 point. The leading, it doesn't really matter. I'm totally fine with that. That looks good. So I'm just say okay. So I have a page number. Maybe I'll pull this all the way down to the bottom. That's even less significant. And I'm just going to align it a certain way. Well, how can I align it? So my text frame is this big. Great. And because I'm on my master page, the text frame actually shows up as like a dotted line, but because I'm so close to it, you can't see it, but it actually shows up kind of like a dotted line. So what I want to do, I'm going to right align this inside the text frame, this letter A that showed up. And the way to do that, I could open up my paragraph panel. I can align it to the right. Great. Well, there is another option. How do I align it to the bottom? Well, of course, I could just shrink down my text frame and bring it down to the bottom. That's not a problem. Well, eventually the letter itself, the page number is going to go from 1 to a double digit to 12 all the way up to 24, but I'll show you how to get rid of those because you don't need to number the back page or the front page. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you another text frame option. So I'm going to click on this text frame, Command B, which is text frame options, which was found under object. And now I have a vertical justification. And what I can do by default, everything's always aligned to the top, of course. But now instead I could align to the center. I could align to the bottom, and that's what I want. So now it automatically aligns to the bottom. Yes, of course, I could have just shrunk this down, the text frame, but I wanted to show you this extra little option, which I think is really, really useful. But I'm going to shrink this down just a little bit. But keep in mind, that is going to turn into like a 20, so you do need that extra space at least there. Great. So I'm going to have page numbering on this page. Well, maybe I want page numbering on this side too, potentially. But let's do it up anyways. So I'm going to click that. I'm going to hold on Option and Shift and bring it over here. I'm going to zoom in, Command plus. I'm going to click on it again, Command B. And now I'm going to say, let's go back to, oh, actually, no, I don't need that. That's fine. It's already to the bottom. I need just to select it and say it's going to be left justified. So I use the align paragraph options here, and they're obviously here as well under paragraph panel. So that's it. I'm good. So now, done. That's it. That's all it took. So now if I go to my inside pages here, I'll double click on page 2, and look, right away, page 2, page 3, page 5. Awesome. And page, is that going to work? Because I have my placeholder, but even if my image was there, would it actually show up properly? Well, maybe what I need to do is put the page numbers on their own layer and bring them all the way to the top. So let's do that. I'm going to go to my master page. I'm going to select them. I select my 2 templated areas where I put my page number. Let me actually bring this down here so I can get out of the way a little bit. So I've selected them. I go to my layer panel. I'm going to make a new layer, layer 3. I'm going to call it page numbers. Okay. And I'm just going to click and drag that little square up here to say, now whatever content was here I want on this layer, done. Now, whatever happens, these page numbers are going to be in the very top of everything because the top layer is the closest thing to the viewer. The bottom layer is the furthest thing from the viewer. So the pictures will be on the bottom and the type will be on top, or the page numbering will be on top. So let's go back to our page number. Once again, you kind of can't see it, but let's pretend. Let's change this placeholder to a different color. I could see it is there. Perfect. That's great. Now, realistically, let's think about something. Do I really need the page numbering on this side and this side? If this page number is 5, well, obviously this one is 4. So I want to get rid of this page number. I don't need it. Well, I'm going to click on it. It's not letting me click on it. Well, that's the beauty of the master page too. So once you're off of the master page, You can't actually change the master page or what's on the master page, but there is a way to release some of the content from the master when you're on your live page here. So the way to do that, you click on Shift and Command, and you click the object you want to release from the master page, and that's it. Command Shift, and now I can click on it and it's gone. Is it gone here? No. Is it gone here? No, it's still there. I just released it from here and I deleted it. So there's one way to do that, of course, if you want to do that. And that's it. So the page numbering is done, and that's a great way to play around with that. All right, the next thing I want to look at is bringing in the pictures. But I'm going to focus on this a little bit because we're going to talk about the raster graphics in general, how to get some raster graphics from online, but also how to bring them in. So first, let's focus on that. So let's pretend I don't have any pictures. So I'm going to go to Firefox, and I just want to show you this quickly. And Google changes all the time, so this might not be the way it's laid out when you're looking at this in a year or two, who knows. So I'm just going to go to Google and I'm going to type in, one of the ones I have here was like a pot pie. Let's try this out. Okay, I'm going to click on pot pie, and I'm going to go to image search, and there they are. How do I get the best quality, or at least I know it's going to be the best quality for my book? Well, my book is 8x8, and the picture itself, I know if I click back onto it, is roughly 8.125 by 8.25. That's fine. Well, I want a large, high resolution, good quality image from Google. Let's just pretend I'm going to grab one from here. I just want to show you a way to image search it. So I'm going to click on I can see if I roll over, I click, oh, that's a nice one. I like that. But it's like, I don't know. It's 800 by 450. That's too small. The pixel density is too small. I know that's not going to work. And I don't want to just click on it and bring it into Photoshop and scale it up. That's not going to work. It's going to get all pixelated. It's going to look really bad, low quality. We don't want that. Well, how do I find a high resolution or a large pixel density image? Well, I'm going to go up to this gear here, quick settings. I'm going to go to advanced search. So even if Google changes this up down the road, their user interface, always look for advanced search on your image search, and hopefully it'll always be there. What I do want to do is look at any size or the image size, and I want to go down here. So we have to think about something here. Right now, my image is going to be, I'm going to need it to be quite larger. So if I look at 2 megapixels, so that means it's a 2000 megapixel. That means it's maybe 2000 by 1000, or if the 4 megapixels, like maybe it's a 2000 by 2000 image. So these are quite large, but let's look exactly what I'm looking for. So right now, I'm going to click on this, and this is a great way to set up your raster image template anyways. I'm going to click on my placeholder. Command C, I copy it. I'm going to open up Photoshop. I'm going to go to in my Photoshop, File, and New. And look what happens. I'm going to open my pixels. I'm going to say inches. 8.125 by 8.25. If you notice, what it did was it copied that square that I had exactly, and it remembered the dimensions. So when I opened up a new document in Photoshop, it remembered the dimensions. All I had to do was change it to inches. So now I'm going to change the resolution, because this is for print, to 300 pixels per inch. Great. And make sure it's pixels per inch, not per centimeter. Per centimeter will be much bigger. We don't want that. I'm going to keep it at CMYK because, once again, it's for print. That's what I want. Done. I'm going to press create. Now, here's what's important. Anything you bring into this document will instantly become 300 pixels per inch CMYK, which is awesome. That is great, and that's what we want. So before I do anything, I'm going to go to image size, image, and image size. And it tells me right away at 300 pixels per inch, at 8.125 roughly, which I'm not going to really change that, 8.25, the pixel density I'm looking for is roughly 2500 by 2500. So it already tells me that. That's my pixel density. Great. So let's go back to Firefox and see what I'm looking at. So if that pixel density is 25 by 2500, in order to find an image that is going to be good quality enough, and let's assume the images on here on Firefox in general are going to be 72 pixels per inch, I need to find something potentially between 4 and 6. Remember, I don't want to find something small and then I have to scale it up in Photoshop. It's going to become pixelated, blurry, no good. So I'm going to go to larger than 6 megapixel, and that should work. 4 might work, but remember, if I go too far up, I'm going to get less selection because there's a lot less high resolution images that go up that high on the web. So I'm going to click on 6, and that's it. I'm going to say advanced search, and I'm going to click on this nice pot pie here, and look, it shows me 4,300 by close to 3,000. That's actually not bad. It doesn't match. Oh, it does 29. Let's see. I'm going to go to Photoshop here. Where was I again? 29. Actually, no, I will be good. It will be big enough to bring in. Let's actually just try it out. So I'm going to go here. Let's see if I could actually bring this image in. You never know. Yep, there it is. I click on it. I'm going to right click and save the image as. And because I have an organized folder, I'm going to bring it in my organized folder. I'm going to resources. I'm going to click on, maybe I will make a new image, a new folder and call it images, create, and I'm just going to bring it in. And it's a WebP, which is totally fine. I'm going to save it because now Photoshop can open up WebP graphics. And I'm going to go back into Photoshop and file. Oh, let's cancel that. File and open. And I am going to go back to my desktop, and I'm going to find my cookbook, and I'm going to click on my resources and images, and there's my image resources. There it is. WebP opens up, and there it is. Perfect. So I see right away it's RGB, not a problem. I go to image and image size, and I see that it is 72 pixels per inch. I was right. That's roughly what it is. It's 60 by 40. That's okay. It doesn't really matter. What I want is the pixel density. As long as it's larger than the pixel density of my document there, I'm good. So I'm going to say cancel. Now, as soon as I bring this image into my document, once again, it's going to instantly become 300 pixels per inch in CMYK. So I'm just going to click it and drag. I'm not going to let go of my click. Hover over my document, my new document. I'm going to click, and my click is still being held. I'm going to drop it in, and there it is. And look, it fits in bigger than I need. So I could Command T or edit and free transform. My bounding box shows up, and I could kind of shrink it down, and I could bring it in. But I just want to show you this is how you can do that. Another way to find images online, there's so many great resources. One I really enjoy is Pexels. If I go to Pexels, I click on that. There's Pixabay, there's Unsplash. There's a bunch of great ones, but I really do enjoy this one. And once again, if I type in PodPie, I also have utilize Envato Elements. They're great resources. And, you might not find everything you need. Here's Harry Potter for some reason, but that's okay. There are a bunch of great resources here, but you can find great images here. Let's pretend this was good for some reason. I can download it, free download. Give credit to the person potentially, which is always a good idea. There it is. I'm going to go to my downloads. I'm going to open in Finder. I'm going to click it open, drag it into Photoshop over top of the icon in my dock. That's another way to open in Photoshop. And there it is. So if I click and drag, well, actually, let's look at it first. Image size. I see that it's 72 pixels per inch, but look at that. It's really large pixel density, and this would totally work too inside of my new document. There it is. I could totally see that working, which would be great. But obviously that's not what I'm looking for. And I'm done in Photoshop in general. Not necessary. I'm going to close that. But at least now you know how to search for images properly in Google. And obviously some great resources online to find images. Okay, what I've done is I've placed all my linked images inside a links folder on my cookbook, organized folder. Let's go take a look at it. So here I am, my cookbook, and I see my links, and I've already placed them in here. I've made them proper. So that's all I did was I've copied this in as I did before. Go to Photoshop. I'm going to close all this again. Command N. It shows up exactly as 8.125, 8.25, 300 pixels per inch. I brought in my images. Let's go find one real quick. I'm going to bring that pot pie in. I'm going to bring it into Photoshop. If I bring it in that way, actually it opens up as a smart object, which I don't want. So it opens up and it kind of just fits to the document. That's not correct. And a smart object is great, but it's not what I want. So what I'll do instead, I'm going to open that pot pie. I'm going to drag it onto the Photoshop icon, or I could have just said file open, and this is how I want to do it. I'm going to click and drag that image, bring it into my document. I know automatically it's going to be 300 pixels per inch, because I set it up that way, and it's going to be CMYK. Great. So let me play around with this. Can I increase the size of it a little bit? Sure, just a little bit. Don't make it too big, because then you're going to get pixelated, but I don't really need to because the image was great already. Let's just say I'm there. I'm happy with it. I press enter. That's all I have to do to save this as a TIFF. because I know it's 300 pixels per inch in CMYK. I'm going to go to File, Save a Copy. This is your best bet. Save a copy. And I'm going to go into my desktop and go to Cookbook, and I go to my links, and I would put it here. Let's save it again as PodPy. So it's PodPy. It's a JPEG. I don't want a JPEG. I want a TIFF. There's no compression on a TIFF, and it's just your best high quality and your lowest file size you can get at that high quality. So it's a TIFF. I'm going to say save, and I'll replace it. Yeah, sure, not a problem. I didn't like that. Okay, no worries. Let's do it another way. I'm going to save a copy, and then go to PodPy, but let's call it PodPy 1 or something. And I'll save it as a TIFF, and I'll say save, and now my TIFF dialog box shows up. And once again, because there is an actual extra layer there, which is kind of unnecessary, but it does show up in Photoshop, they add those automatically. I'm going to discard the layers and save a copy. Make sure there's no compression and that you discard the layers and save a copy, because you do not want this extra information in there. It's not necessary. That's the whole point of a TIFF. It's high quality and low file size. So discard layers and save a copy. Okay. And there it is. Done. I'm happy with that. It's right here, PodPy _2. That's the one I'm going to use. How do I bring an image in? Very simple. Well, number one, I already have the placeholder here. So why not utilize the placeholder already set up? I'm going to click on the placeholder, File, Place, or Command D, get used to that keyboard shortcut, and place in your image. So I'm going to go down to there, Desktop, Cookbook, Links, and PodPy number 2. Okay, open. Done. It adds it in perfectly. All right, so if I click on the frame, I can move the frame around, do whatever I want. But if I double click on the frame, I'm accessing the content inside of the frame, and I see it fits the frame perfectly. And remember, I extended it to the bleed already, and when I copied that into Photoshop, it took it with it, so it extends to the bleed. I don't have to worry about that. Make sure I don't see that. Make sure that it extends to the bleed, the frame extends to the bleed, and play around with it properly there. So I press W, I can see it, it looks great. I'm happy with that. Now, because it's that size, if I extend the frame, I just get more yellow, which I can just shut that off. I don't want that. Just none is fine. If I click on that, that means none. I'll bring it back. If I wanted, say, I want it to come over a little bit more, kind of like what I did here. I'm just added a little bit of interest here by adding a diagonal line and having it kind of come over a little bit further. I could do that, but here I can't because, the frame itself, if I click on my direct selection tool, the white arrow, I can click on the frame and bring it over a little bit, individual. But once again, it can't really do anything because that's the size of the picture. Now, can I increase the size of the picture in here? Yes, I can, but you gotta be careful. I don't suggest you do it. I suggest you kind of do that in Photoshop. Just make it a little bit bigger than that 8.125 by 8.25. Because what happens is this. When you bring in a linked image into InDesign, it shows you all this great information. So if I go to my links panel, let me kind of clean this up a little bit so it's not too overwhelming here. When I open my links panel, I can click on this little arrow here in the links panel, and it brings down and shows me everything that's going on with this image, because that's the image that's selected. It tells me everything I need. It's a TIFF, the name of it, what page it's on, the color mode, if it's okay, if there's an issue with it, and it tells me exactly the actual PPI. So that's what the actual PPI of it is. But the effective PPI is if I scale it down or make it bigger, it's going to change up the PPI. So if I do make it bigger, let's click on that and make it bigger. Watch, the effective PPI will change. It will shrink, meaning I've enlarged the pixels. I'm getting closer to it being blurry. Obviously 300 pixels per inch is where I want to be. 240 is not the end of the world. It's still going to look good. Hopefully your image is high quality enough anyways that it could withstand that. And maybe I could play around with it this way. So as I shrink it down, well, the pixels are no longer being stretched and squeezed and whatever. They're actually going back up. The resolution's going back up. So that's not horrible. If I bring it down smaller, now the effective PPI is getting even bigger. So this is really high resolution, but obviously I don't need that. It's redundant, or sorry, not redundant. It's unnecessary to have that much resolution, obviously, for a print job like this. So just to show you, if you do scale up your images in InDesign, you're going to have issues with your effective PPI. So I can scale it up to really, really big, and all of a sudden it's 88. That's not good. So it's going to be pixelated, not good. So please don't scale your images in Photoshop or in InDesign or in Illustrator for that matter, bigger than they originally came in at, because your pixel density is going to suffer. And that's not a good thing. Either way, just to show you, if you wanted to do that, just be careful with that. So I'm going to bring that back here just to keep that all aligned. And that is how I bring in my raster graphics into InDesign. Now here's something else that's pretty interesting that I like to use, because now we're going to get into the color palette. What I like to do, if I already didn't have a color palette laid out or ideas of how I wanted to use color in this, which sometimes I want to just keep it very low key, keep it very simple. Now in this particular one, what I did was I would choose color from the picture that was already here to kind of really complement it and have it flow nicely, and that's kind of what I did. So on this one I chose this nice pink hue, that was nice. On this one I chose this gold, more gold beigey color, which is great, and so on. And what I did was I just chose colors from the picture. And it's a really, really easy way to do that. Let's do this. So I click on the image, and what I can do is go to this eyedropper, and by default it usually is on color theme tool, but I'm going to click on color theme tool because I just choose the eyedropper tool. And what I could do is I could hover over this color or this picture and choose colors from it. It gives me kind of the major colors that make up this picture. So let me do that. So I'm going to click on this picture, and automatically InDesign shows me this panel that shows up. It shows me these are the major colors from this, and look at these beautiful colors that I can choose from. So what can I do? I can add this theme, the whole theme, to the swatches. I could add it to the CC library, which I'm not going to do. I'm just going to add the theme to the swatches. And if I open up my swatches, there it is. Colorful themes, and exactly there. So I'm just going to take this, and for some reason, it loves to stay there. The X disappears on my InDesign, but hopefully you can close yours, and that'd be nice. So I'm just going to choose now some colors that I grabbed from here. I'm going to choose one major color, and maybe this brown, maybe this orange. We'll see kind of what I want to choose. Well, I actually kind of like that. It's very earthy. That's actually quite beautiful. And I could do that. And now what I did was, if you noticed, it changed the color. And what happened to my paragraph style? It added the little plus sign, because I changed a part of it. I changed the paragraph style into outside of the paragraph style. I changed the color outside of the paragraph style. But maybe I want all my titles to have that color. Maybe I don't. It's up to me. So instead, what I could do is I could double click on a recipe title and go to character color. And now with the character color in my paragraph style, I can go and find it. It's like, oh, that's the color right there. Great. No more plus sign, because now that color is a part of the paragraph style. So that's something you could do as well. And actually, quite frankly, like I said, that is quite a nice color. Well, let's continue further. Let's actually keep this actually really nice color useful throughout my cookbook and keep it consistent. So what I'll do is I'll click on, I know that this is a part of, subheading. Remember, I click on it and it shows me what it's connected to. So I'm going to click on subheading, and I'm going to go to character color. Let's do it. So I go down here, I choose that same orange, and I say, okay, great. And there I go. Beautiful. All right, good. So I can continue on like this and add those little spikes of color in certain areas. And look what happened. I think my page number also changed because it was connected, wasn't it? Page number. I did connect it to subheading. It was based on subheading. I should have said no paragraph style, but you know what? It's totally fine. I actually kind of like that. Now, another thing I can do here, I'm going to get back to the swatch panel in just a little bit. I can also go up to Illustrator. All right, so I brought in some raster graphics, but now what about vector graphics? Maybe you want to do you don't want any raster graphics in this at all. Maybe you want to do everything in Illustrator. Maybe you want to have everything vector, which is totally fine. I think that's a great idea. It could be really cool if you were to do that, but it's entirely up to you how you want to do that. But if you wanted to sketch them out, if you want to make them vector, make your images vector, that's a great idea. That'd be really cool. But that's all I've done with mine, is I just made a pretty interesting pattern that I want to use as a background. for all my pages, and to keep a nice, very consistent pattern, a nice texture that gives a nice feel to the whole thing. That's not a bad idea. Instead of having just stark white backgrounds or just, you know, color bars, why not add a very nice, interesting pattern that gives it a certain feel to the overall aesthetic you're trying to go for? So I chose this graphic, so I'm just going to copy it. I'm in Illustrator right now. I'm just going to copy it. I'm going to go into my InDesign, and I'm going to make a layer right away. I'm going to make a new layer. I'm going to call it background. I'm going to bring it all the way to the bottom, and I am going to name it properly. Sorry. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to paste it in and see what happens. So let's paste, Command V. All right, this is what I expected to happen. So normally vectors from Illustrator can easily be copied into InDesign, but this one's a little more complex. And InDesign saying, hey, you know what? It's going to make for a large number of page items and it's going to degrade the performance, and we don't want that. So what it did, it made an embedded EPS. That's okay. I know that from Illustrator, number one, it's vector. I know that that particular page was CMYK. I'm good. So I'm just going to say okay, and I bring it in, and here I line it up, and there's my background image. Lovely, it looks really good. It extends to the bleed. Let me make sure it does. And once again, the frame, I can tighten up the frame from here to here, so I don't have all this extra kind of stuff going on, and I'm good. So now I have this lovely pattern that I made in Illustrator, and I brought it in. It's a nice background, it adds to it, and I could lock it if I don't want to touch it, make sure it doesn't go anywhere, whatever I want to do. So now I have this lovely vector, and once again, you can copy and paste vectors into Illustrator, or sorry, into InDesign, or I could easily just go to File. Now I can just save this. I'm going to go to Save As, and I can go to my, once again, my cookbook. And I'll go into a link. I'll place it in the links. Sorry, where are we here? I'll place it in my links, and there I go. And I'll just call this, you know, book pattern AI. And I can bring in an AI, or I could save it as an EPS. That's fine. But either way, it doesn't really matter. InDesign will take both. But for now, let me save it as an AI file. That's great. I'm just going to say save. And okay, and once again, I could have done the same thing. I could Command D or File, place in InDesign, and find that AI file, book pattern, and open it. So now instead of it being an embedded EPS, I actually have a linked file, a linked AI file, which is right there. And there we go. And it's inside of a frame. It looks great, all that good stuff. So a couple different ways to bring in a vector graphic, however you want to bring them in. And we could definitely play around and have some fun with that. I did mention I was going to talk about the swatch panel, but first I want to talk about the table of contents. All right, because we're going to knock out a couple things here with the table of contents. If I quickly, I don't know what happened there. Call that background again. If I look at my pages, I still have only these few pages. I still have a lot of pages to go, but let's pretend our template is exactly where we want to be. We love what it does, but I'll get back to that in just a little bit. Our table of contents. So normally what would happen is I would duplicate this. I'm going to duplicate this template because I love it. I'm happy with it. It looks great. And that by duplicating it and naming this particular paragraph style different things, it's going to connect to my table of contents. Let me show you what I'm talking about. So I'm happy with this. Maybe I want to add, you know, maybe I'll add a color bar here and kind of break up the content and utilize, once again, the color theme I have. Maybe I use one of these instead and I change up the stroke and that looks cool, whatever. However, keep in mind, you can go on Pinterest, go on Google, take a look at cookbooks and how you can add so much interest and color and different ways to break up the content, but make it interesting and still legible and readable and enjoyable. So look at all those options. But right now, let's pretend I'm really, really happy with my layout and exactly what I want. My paragraph styles are set up. I have character styles set up. My layout is exactly where I want it to be. You're done. So now that's all you have to do, and you want to keep it consistent. You're just going to duplicate your layout over and over and over again. Now, I'm not going to do every page. I'm just going to show you a few just so you see what I'm talking about and how this is going to benefit our table of contents. So I'm going to take these two, I'm going to select both of them, and I'm going to duplicate the spread. And I'm going to continue doing that a few times just to show you something and how this table of contents is going to work. Because really that's all you're going to do, because now you have all these. That's all you have to do is bring in a new image and copy in your new text. So let me show you that at least one time. So here's my second spread. So what am I going to do? I'm going to click on this frame. I'm going to file. I'm going to place, and let's pick another one. Let's do the dumplings were really nice. I'll say okay, done. Well, it moved on me. That's not a problem. I think I made these a little bit smaller than what I should have, but that's not a problem. So what I'll do, actually, my original pictures were not good. I'm going to copy this, go into Photoshop. I already know that, actually, I already know this size is the correct size. I'm going to bring in the dumplings. Click and drag and bring it into the Photoshop document. There it is. Line it up nicely. That looks pretty good. And I'll save it. And once again, I'll call it dumplings _2. I'll save a copy and I'll make it a TIFF and save. No compression and discard the layers. Okay, done. Command D and dumplings _2. There we go. There we go. Lovely. And I'm going to change the title. This is called Ice Wine Dumplings. All right, ice wine dumplings. Great. And I'm now, just for this one, I'm going to bring in the content. I'm not going to change the content much. I just want to show you how to do it and how easy it is. I'm going to click on my resources, my recipes. I'm going to go to my dumpling recipe, and I'm just going to start clicking and dragging. Copy, sorry, not clicking and drag, just copy and paste. Copy, paste, and look what happened. I just have to extend the text frame because it's a little bit bigger. Maybe it's a double line. All right, not a problem. Maybe I'd get rid of that. Maybe I do have to think about how it's going to affect different types. So I would go back, and once again, you are going to massage the layouts a little bit depending on how the content might flow, and that's not a problem. Or of course I could just bring it down a little bit, and I'll copy this one and bring it up here. And what I could do is edit, paste in place, and it will paste it exactly, not only the actual object, but it'll paste it exactly the same place as this one was copied from. Great. I'm going to go back to my content here, and I'm going to copy in the ingredients, and look at that. It does exactly, it used the exact paragraph style. Everything is great. I noticed that these 500G, that one actually said grams, but these ones did not. So keep things consistent. You know, if you're going to use G for grams, use it throughout, or ML, or try to keep it consistent with the same measuring system as well. I noticed that this recommended changed the way it looked before. So once again, I'm going to soft return, which is Shift and Enter. I'm going to click on my paragraph style and make sure this is, or sorry, my character style, and make sure it's ingredient italic. And I can maybe once again decrease the size of this and keep it consistent with the one above. So little things like that I could change and fix and massage it a little bit, as I mentioned. And I'm going to do my last one here is going to be my instructions. So I'm just going to copy and paste these instructions. Great. Right up to there, paste. And once again, I do have an issue with my entering. Not a problem. This is going to take 2 seconds. So with pair of, so I just bring that up there. I'm going to get rid of that and press soft return. And I'm just pressing once again to clean this up. So if I take a look at it properly with my preview off, and I could see my actual hidden characters, I see, oh, there's my soft return, there's my hard return, soft return, hard return. So now it all lines up quite well. Had an extra period there, get rid of it. It's a good idea to get rid of any extra spaces you don't need, or any extra, obviously, punctuation you don't need. And you know what's one thing I do enjoy? I actually don't love the hyphenations all the time. If I don't need them, I do like to get rid of them. One way to get rid of them, I could select the content, Command A to select it all. If I go to paragraph, what I could do is unhyphenate. I can click on, sorry, let me bring it down, There it is. And I can click on hyphenate and it gets rid of any hyphenations. Like I said, sometimes hyphenations do work. They are necessary, especially if we're talking about, justified type. This is left align and right ragged, which I prefer reading. And it's very legible, very readable. And that's important too. So I do like getting rid of those hyphenations. If you don't like them as well, you can just click on your type and click on that. It gets rid of them, which is great. Okay, so I've copy and pasted in my content there. So now I've imported my text. We've done that. We've brought in some images. We've done that. We've brought in some vector graphics. We've done that as well. I'm just going to continue on. I'm not going to change too much here. What I am going to do is I'm just going to change up the titles because this is what's going to benefit us and show us how the table of contents work. I'm just going to do a few more. And what I'll do, instead of naming them properly, I'm just going to say ice wine recipe 2. Oh, 2. Oh, it doesn't have any numerals. Okay, that's okay. Ice wine recipe. Let's just write it out. 2. Copy. I'll go to the next spread. Remember, the spread is fine. I'm happy with how it looks. The layout is great. I've saved myself a lot of time just by making one really, really good layout. And now that's all I have to do is duplicate it and fill in the blanks. It takes me no time at all. So because the particular typeface I chose doesn't actually have numerals as a part of it, I must have got it from DeFont or something like that. I'm actually just writing out the words or the numbers because they don't actually have numerals, just to show you something with the table of contents, which is a fantastic thing to do here. Okay, so I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 spreads with recipes on them. Great. This is going to be a great thing in my table of contents. What I can do is go up to my table of contents page where I want to put my table of contents. I'm just going to click and drag a box for now. With my text tool, I clicked and dragged a frame. I'm going to go up to layout and table of contents. Okay, so this is the important part why you only attach, let me cancel this really quickly. You only attach your recipes to one specific paragraph style, recipe title. So this is why we do that. Nothing else will be connected to recipe title. Only the recipe titles are connected to recipe title. Don't connect this to recipe title. Only these are their own paragraph style. This is the only way it's going to work. And it is a great thing. So I select that. I go up to layout and table of contents. And here it says, this little dialog box says, okay, what do we want to do here? Well, what I want to do, I want to populate my table of contents with all the recipe titles, meaning that each page where the recipe title exists will be numbered. So that's my table of contents. It does it for me automatically. All I have to do is click over here, find my recipe title, and add it. Done. If I want to change up the style, which I can do later, I can change it here, or I'm going to change it. I'm going to make one later on because I don't actually have a table of contents style just yet. That's it. When I say okay, watch what happens. Oh, I guess I didn't need to. Okay. I didn't need to actually already set up a text frame. It's already kind of going to make one for me, but I'm sure I can just pop it in here because I do have a text frame made. If I look at my cursor, if I'm outside of my text frame, I can click and drag and make a text frame. If I'm inside my text frame, it's going to fill this text frame already. And there it is. Now keep in mind, this particular typeface does not have numerals. That's okay. I don't want this to be my style anyways, but look what it did. It actually put in the word contents, which I could put table of contents. It named all the recipe titles. And these, if they were proper numerals, which they're not, but I will fix, it was going to show you the page number it's on to. It's already done for you, and I definitely want to see you do this. So what I can do, I'm going to select this content. I'm going to make a new paragraph style. I'm going to go to Gotham, and I'll do narrow. And for now, I'm just going to do book. I can change it whenever I want. I'm going to bring down the size of some of these. I think it's a little too big, even for a table of contents. And look, my numerals show up on page 5, on page 7, 9. I'm going to show you something a little bit later too. And right away, what else do I see? A tab. This hidden character is showing me a tab. And on this assignment, you do need to show me tabs. So I'm going to bring it down. Bring this text frame down here a little bit. I could lay this out any way I want in a certain way. It doesn't really matter. That's up to you. So I have that laid out. And now what I'm going to do, I'm going to make a table of contents character style, which is what I'm currently doing right now. So there it is. Made it a little bit smaller. And I'm going to, you know what, I'm fine with this. I made it smaller, but it's still the typeface I want. And I'm just going to plus and say TOC, or table of contents. And that's it. Okay, good, done. I'm going to bring it to the bottom. Once again, it's important, but I could still structure it there under page number. It's totally fine. Now, my tabs are there, but my tabs aren't set up properly. I want my tabs to be over here. So what I can do, I'm going to, I could select it all, go to type and tabs. Now, normally panels are under the window, but this tab one and glyphs, quite frankly, are under type, and that's okay. So my tabs show up. So what I can do with my tabs, if I click on the text frame that it's a part of, I can click on the magnet, and as long as I can see the top of the text frame, it will magnetize to it, and this helps out. In order to add in a tab, that's all I have to do is select the tab I want, and I do want this right justified tab. I'm going to click on that one, and where I place my tab is actually in this white bar above the ruler. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to click and I'm going to drag, and you see that black line show up. That's where the tab is going to align to, and I want to align it right to the edge here, just to show you. Maybe you do want to align it here, maybe you want to align it here. It's entirely up to you, but I do want to show you this. I'm going to click and drag. I went over a bit and it gets into this gray bar, and that's okay. I want to get back to the white bar, and I want to align it just in front of this arrow pointing to the left. So I'll align it right there. Done. And look, the tabs are already set up. We're already good to go. The other thing I can do, if I want, I can click on that tab again, and I can add a leader if I want to add a leader, which is, I'll just add a decimal or a period, and I press enter, and now the leader is there. But I only had that selected. I only had this area, so my cursor was there. My fault. I'm going to select them all. Then I'll add, I selected the tab as well. I pressed the leader, and now they're all going to have leaders. Okay. So that's one way to do it if you'd like to. This is one way to set up your table of contents. I definitely want to see that. Manually setting up your table of contents is fine, but in this situation, we've set up our recipe titles properly. They're on each page, and watch what happens now. Notice that my ice wine recipe 5 is on page 15. Page 15, that's where that recipe title shows up. I'm going to do something here. I am going to duplicate the spread. All right, and I am going to actually delete this one and call this recipe 6. Let's just say. And recipe 6 now is on page 17. All right. So if we go back to the top, and it still says recipe 5 still exists, which it doesn't anymore. And recipe 6, it should be on page 17. It's not there. That's okay. Layout, update table of contents. Well, I did lose my style. That's true. That's okay. So maybe keep that in mind. Try not to mess around with this too much. So that's all I have to do. But because my style is already laid out, I can just click on TOC and I can restructure my tab, which is pretty easy to do. Bring it all the way over here. And it's set up again. That didn't take long at all. So I could play around with this quite a bit. So it's a great way to play around with it. So maybe I suggest doing your table of contents right at the end when you're kind of set and done. So nothing really changes here and you don't really have to update it, but it is an option to update your table of contents, which is great. All right, so the table of contents is set. You're good to go there. All right, I do want to talk about the swatch panel as well right now. And what the swatch panel can afford us is many great things. And once again, I brought in another picture. So what I'll do here is I'm also going to eyedrop this one, a color theme picker, and there it is. And I can add it to my swatch panel as I've done before. Some beautiful colors I can choose, but once again, you might want to keep some things consistent. It does show up here, and maybe you want to change up some of the colors. It's entirely up to you. You do not have to, but once again, if you do that, it adds a plus sign to, because it was changed outside of the paragraph style, which once again is totally fine. It's not a big issue. Not every single one has to be perfect, but I do want to see all the type connected to some form of paragraph style. So, and you know what, just to show you, I'm just going to click, and I am going to add one more character style just to show you character styles one more time. Let's pretend I want to advertise or kind of push this a little bit more, maybe this particular wine bottle here, and I'm going to make a character style here. So I'm going to go to character here, and maybe I'll bold this one. So I'll call it bold. I'll go to basic character formats, and I'm just going to Gotham narrow, and I'll make it bold. And if I preview it, I see that it's bold. That's it. And once again, if I want to bold that somewhere else, maybe I want to bold it potentially another, particular important part of a recipe. If I can find one, there it is again. Let's just say, there I go, and I click on bold, and now it's connected to that. And maybe let's say I want to click on bold, and I also want to change the color of bold, and I want to make it one of these kind of nice colors here. This down to earth green. There you go. And now that will also change here as well. There it is. And that's the beauty of the paragraph styles. Because it's already connected, all your layouts are connected. You did it once, you duplicated it, everything's connected. That's all you did was copy and paste in new content. So if I want to say, you know what, I don't like the leading on this. I want the leading to be more. Not a problem. Go to your paragraph style without anything selected. Click on whichever paragraph style it was connected to, direction, body. I click on direction, body, and I'm going to increase the leading. So I'll go to basic character formats. I'll increase the leading, and look at that. Not only did it change it here, it changed it here, it changed it everywhere it was connected to, and that is the beauty. So if I wanted to change this here and I didn't have paragraph styles, I'd have to change it manually here and then go to this page and so on and so on and so on. And this is a small book. Imagine if you had a larger book and your paragraph styles weren't set up, that'd be pretty bad. Either way, that's why we do it, and that's how we do it. So hopefully you understand now the benefits of the character styles there as well. So in the swatch panels, what I have is all these colors, and there's plenty of colors I didn't use. So a quick way to get rid of the colors I never use that actually aren't applied to anything, I just go up to the drop down here under the swatches panel, click, select all unused. Well, it highlights them, and I could just delete them. I don't need them. It just takes up extra little space I don't need. It's not necessary. However, there is something else that happens too. If I were to just make a square here for whatever reason as an interesting piece, and I go to my color panel, and maybe I pick a nice color here, and I make it the fill. Okay, there's a nice color. Well, if I go to my swatch panel, that color actually does not exist here. Now, just because you added a color, and yes, you did attach it to something on the page, does not mean it automatically gets added here, but it's a good idea to make sure all your swatches are here, because you want to know if your swatches are proper, which ones you're using, if they're CMYK and they're 4-color process. Because for this assignment, I do not want to see any Pantone colors. I don't want to see any RGB colors. If you accidentally copied in a vector into from Illustrator into InDesign and it took with it its swatches, obviously it does, and there's a Pantone in there, you got to change it. So I'm going to show you that really quickly. But what you can do, especially if you did this a lot, you could actually go up to the drop down and add unnamed colors. I add it, and there it is. And it shows up as CMYK 4-color process. Great. So that's a great way. All of a sudden, if you added some interesting colors here and there, but you didn't actually bring them into your swatch panel, just drop down, add unnamed colors, and you're good to go. And that's kind of how that works. Now let's pretend I'm going to do this. Let's pretend for some reason you copied in a vector graphic into InDesign and it was a Pantone. So I'm going to turn one of these into a Pantone color. I'm going to double click. There's my swatch options. I'm going to click on this and I'm click Pantone plus solid coated. And I'm going to pick a random green color that is maybe similar to this. Let's just click on that. Not too similar, but that's okay. And I'm going to press OK. So I see it's a spot color right here. And I see it's a Pantone color from that Pantone icon there as well. Now, I don't want to see those. So that's all I really would do is double click, go back to CMYK and click on process and name with color value, which I always like to see the CMYK, and okay. Same idea if one of these was RGB. Let's convert it accidentally. I click on it, I make it RGB, I say okay, and now it's an RGB color. That's not good. So I double click on it, make sure it's CMYK, make sure it's a process color, and say okay, and I'm good to go. So make sure you convert any colors you have that are RGB or Pantone, make sure they're CMYK and they're 4-color process, or at least we say that they're process color here. That's it. So that's how the swatch panel works. Now, here's a great thing about the InDesign swatch panel too. If you did want to throw out, so you know what, I don't want to use this color, this particular beige, I'm not actually happy with it. I wish it was all this orange color. Here's a great thing about InDesign is that you could actually throw out the color. And InDesign's just not going to let it go there. InDesign's going to say, well, there are some things attached to that color, like especially this line. What do you want to change it to? It's like, you know what? I want to change it to one of my swatch panels colors right here. So I'm going to change it to this orange one, and it will automatically take all the color that was connected to this and quickly switch it to one of these ones, which happens to be this. Done. Look at that. Beautiful. So swapping out colors, really easy to do. Adding them named colors and deleting colors, really easy to do here in InDesign. All right, let's talk about the slug line. We didn't get to that yet. So I'm going to go to my master pages and see what I can do here with the slug line, because that's where I want your slug line to go. So I'm going to click on the slug line that I gave you. So here's the slug line that I gave you. It's up to date, January 2023. And in this file, this IDML file, what you'll find is a table. And it's a very organized, structured table. And what it is, it's the exact same size of what you need and where it's going to be placed. So what you're going to do with the table, you're going to copy it, select it, copy it, Command C. You're going to go into, and I should save my document. I've done a lot of work and I haven't saved it. That little asterisk means I haven't saved it. So let's save it, Command S. Make sure you're saving it in a proper file format in your organized folder. I can get rid of this tab. I don't need it anymore, the tab panel. I'm on the inside master page, which is fine, or parent page. And you could place it just on this one. I'm totally fine with that. You don't need to place it on the B cover. You could place it just right here on the inside. It doesn't really matter, but keep it on the inside. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to paste it. And this table will fit exactly into your slug line. The blue line at the bottom here, that's what the slug line is. The slug line holds the information for this project. All right, it tells me everything I need to know about the project. So let's go through it. It tells me the file name, which happens to be my last name, first initial, section number, cookbook, and the date, the month and the year I started it. Great. The job description, it is a cookbook. The client, I am the client. You don't have to change that. So part of your mark as well is going to be not only bringing this in and setting it up properly, but it's also going to be you changing up the part that needs to be changed. So when did I start working on this? I started January 13th, and whenever you started, you would change the date. Modified date. So the modified date would be when other times you've modified it. Now let's keep in mind, let's pretend other designers are working on this and you're sending the file around to people. Maybe they change up the modified date every time they work on it too. The designers, well, you're going to change it to your name. The contact information, this is fake information. I don't care if it's real or fake, but at least put a fake email and a fake phone number. Now, the color itself. The job is a CMYK, so there's no Pantone, there's no RGB, thank goodness, and it's a 4/4. That means that on one side of the paper, there's going to be 4 inks, CMYK, and on the other side of the paper, the back side of the paper, there's going to be another 4 inks, CMYK. So 4 inks are going to go on the front of the paper and the back of the paper. This is a full color job. That's what that means. So front and back, 4 inks over 4 inks. Pantone color, there is no Pantone color. If there was, you would label it here what the Pantone color was. The dimensions of the book is 8 by 8 inches. The page count is 24 pages, which actually adds up to 6 sheets, double-sided. The bleed, yes, there is a bleed, and it's 0.125 inches. There are no die lines. If you wanted to add a die line, let's pretend you wanted your rounded corners, or there's a specific cut out of the front cover, maybe you're doing something interesting, you would show what the die line would be and where it was located. It's prepared at 100%, meaning it's not scaling. You didn't design it 8x8, but it's actually a 16x16, and they need to blow it up 200%. No, you designed it at 8x8, and it's going to be printed 8x8. Any other information you can add, you don't need to. The stock, it's going to be printed on 12-point cover. So the cover is going to be 12-point cover, and the inside pages are going to be 80-pound coated cover. We're going to finish the cover with a soft touch lamination. The binding is going to be saddle stitched, meaning there's going to be it's going to be stapled. Sometimes they add 2, or they generally add 2. Sometimes they add 3, but usually we get 2 staples. If you want it to be numbered, you would say, yes, I want it to be numbered, and what the numbering was going to be, 001 to 00350. You're printing 350 of these, or it's a limited edition. So you can have numbering, but in this situation, we're not. And if there's any other special instructions, that's it. You put that in there. The next thing you have to do is make a new layer. Call it Slug Line. And I want you to place the Slug Line onto the Slug Line layer. So right here it's under type, so I'm just going to click and drag and bring it up. There it is. Now it's on the Slug Line layer. I could shut it off. And here's the thing you could do with this layer. If you double click on the layer, you could say it's a non-print layer, meaning somehow, some way, if it shows up on your work, it will not get printed. That's kind of a little trick there. And you can see that it's italicized and bold, which shows me it's not going to be printed. Either way, keep it down here. And if you want, when you do go to your pages and you take a look at your pages, obviously it doesn't show up on here because I didn't put it on the master page B. It'll show up here, but because it's on its own layer, I could shut it off and know it's there and not let it really interfere with how I'm going to design my work and lay it out and stuff like that. So the fact that it's there, that's great. It does show up on every page. Oh, that's kind of annoying. That's okay. Shut it off if you don't want to see it. I could always turn it back on, take a look, so can the printer, and they could see what all the specs are about that particular job. So that's what a Slug Line is. That's how it works. Really, really useful. Now, one little trick I want to show you is how we bring in our raster graphics. Now, normally when we bring in our raster graphics, we can just do something simple. We have our placeholder. Even if we didn't have a placeholder, I can just go to File and Place, and of course I can just bring in any image, raster graphic or vector. Let me bring in this hot chocolate TIFF. There it is. I paste it and I can fit it, and then of course I can place it in here and kind of fit the frame. Well, there is kind of another way to do it that might be beneficial to you, but it really only benefits you if all your images are roughly the same size. So let's show you that and how that works. It's called PSD layering. So what it allows me to do is it allows me to save a PSD. Let me go to it right now. And I've already prepared this already. So I called it Wine Layering PSD. Well, let's see what the PSD has inside of it. So what I did was I took all the images I was going to use, and I took the exact size of where I wanted them to be, which happened to be 8.125 by 8.25. I brought that into Photoshop. So I copied this placeholder, brought it into Photoshop, opened it up, made sure it was 300 pixels per inch and CMYK. And I laid out all my pictures. Cheers, the stew, the quiche. I even labeled them. It's a good idea to label them. It's going to come in handy later on. So they're all here right now. So all the images I brought in, I cropped them nicely, so they're all in there. I can move them around still if I want to. Okay, great. The only thing you cannot do after you've done this, you cannot move your layers around. They're exactly the way they are. Do not touch your layer order. Do not change a thing. I'm going to save it. Great. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take that file and I'm going to copy it and I'm going to bring it into my organized folder. I'm going to put it under links and I'm going to place it here. The Wine Layering PSD. Okay. What I'm going to do now So let's pretend I don't have any images in here. And actually, let me get rid of all of them. All right. I might not do this for every page, but at least just to show you this is a great way to do it, especially if your images all look the same. They have that same, sorry, not look the same, they have the same dimension. And even if they don't, you can still play around with this. I'm going to go to File and Place. That's not what I wanted. File, Place. And I'm going to click on and find that Wine Layering PSD. And this time I'm going to show the import options. Normally I don't have that on, but this time I want to see it. I'm going to say OK. And what it's going to do is going to show me a little dialogue and say, okay, well, look at that. It shows me all the layers that made up that PSD, cheesecake, dumplings, hot chocolate martini. They're all in there of my already pre-prepared PSD. Okay. So what I can do, I'm just going to say, you know, which one do I want to see? I click on the eyes that I don't need, the visibility of the layers. These are all the layers. And it shows me right here the layers. I click them off. Maybe I should have done that ahead of time in the PSD. That's okay. I'm going to press OK. And now what I can do, I'm going to click and drag because I made it the exact size of that placeholder. And there it is. Great. Now here's what I can do next. I'm going to copy it. I'm going to go to my next page and edit. Paste in place. So paste not only the object, but it pastes exactly where it needs to go. And now to switch out the image, that's all I have to do is click on the frame, object, and object layer options, and switch the visibility. That's it. I'm going to shut the cheesecake off, and I'm going to turn the dumplings on. And now it switched the layer from that PSD, and now it shows up. Let me do it one more time. I'm going to bring this down, copy, Command C, go to my new spread. I click on it, edit, paste in place. There it is. I click on it, object, object layer options. I shut off the visibility of one layer and turn it on another. Oh, maybe I didn't click on it. Object, object layer options, shut off the dumplings, turn on the hot chocolate, done. This is a great way to really streamline your work, especially if they're all the same size. But even if they weren't the same size, let's pretend maybe I did something like this. They're just not bigger, they're smaller. There's nothing wrong with changing the frame by any means. So I can change up the frame, but the content stays the same. As long as that stays the same, it doesn't matter because that's as big as the image is going to be. So that's a great way to play around with PSD layering, a quick way to bring in images that are all roughly the same size. Now, another issue some people have is if we have a blank page. I don't want to see any blank pages. And what I'm going to do roughly right now is I'm going to add in all the rest of the pages just to show you roughly this what you have to work with here. So I have 16, 17. So I'm going to add in a few more pages. 18. Oh, I didn't want to add it there. I want to add it over after you. There we go. 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, and 24. That's my bottom page. But remember, the numbering showed up. I do not want the numbering on my back cover. So to get rid of that, I just Command Shift and click and delete, and it's gone. All right, so let's pretend one of these, it's usually one of these that might have a blank page, but if you fill everything up, that's great. What I did here with the blank page on this particular cookbook was I filled it with some lines where I could write in my own information. I'm sure you've seen this many times on a cookbook where you can write in your own information, and let me show you how to do it. It's actually a quick way to do it with tabs and underlining. So if I do have a blank page and I'm not sure what to do, that's all I have to do. I'm going to grab a text tool and drag a text frame, and I'm going to select it, and I'm going to go to my type, and I'm going to open up my tab panel. That's all it is really, is you're tabbing over, and each of those tabs you're going to just say underline this area, underline this tab. So I'm going to click on the right justified tab. I'm going to click and drag and bring it all the way over here. Oh, right there. And what I'm going to do with that, I'm going to tab. I'm actually going to press the tab number, and I notice that this is connected once again to a paragraph style. So paragraph styles could be fun when they want to make us work a little harder, and that's okay. So because it was connected to a paragraph style, I have to redo the tab because I just got rid of the paragraph style. My right justified, drag it back over again. There it is, beautiful. So there's the tab right in the middle, and it highlights the whole line. So all I have to do is go to my character panel. Once again, if you don't have it open, window and type and tables and character. And now you can go to your drop down on the character panel and underline options. Great. So I'm going to turn my underline on. So there it is. The preview is on, and what I like to do, I'm a big fan of 0.125 an eighth of an inch. It's nice and slim. It's not overwhelming. If I write something down, the line itself doesn't get in the way, and I'm just going to press OK. Everything else is good. If I want to bring it up and down, I can bring it up and down, but I don't need to. I believe it was 1.2. I can change up the color of it if I want to. You know what? Let me make the color that orange color. We like that color. It's nice. And I'm just going to say OK. I can change up the type of stroke it is, but I'm just going to keep it simple. I can change up the tint, not necessary. Okay, that's all. Done. There is my line. So I'm going to copy that tab. So I select A, Command A to select the tab, and Command C to copy it. I press Enter, Command V. Enter, Command V. Over and over and over again. Look at that. Now there's other ways to do this. You could do a step and repeat if you wanted to do a step and repeat, but I want to show you a way to do the tab, but I'm going to show you step and repeat in just a little bit. So if I click on my preview, click off of my preview, I should say, click W. What do I see? I see all the tabs and I see all the enters, and for some reason I put a W down there. And what I could do instead, if I want to fill this up, instead of doing it over and over and over again, and maybe they're really tightly spaced, what I could do is just select them all and just increase the leading. And now I have it a little bit longer, and that looks good too. Great. And if I want to get rid of this number, I can. I'll move this over real quick. Command Shift that number that was attached to the paragraph, or sorry, the master page, and now I bring it back, and there we go. Another way to make these lines is step and repeat. And step and repeat actually is a fantastic way to work with in InDesign. It's a great little tool. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to make a line, click on the line tool. I'm going to click and drag from here to here, holding down Shift to keep it at a 0-degree angle. I'm going to make the stroke the same orange because I really like that orange. I'll make the stroke. I'll go to my stroke panel, and I'll make it, once again, 0.125, but I'll make it 0.25 just to show you the difference so you can see the difference between these two. And this is a great little tool, step and repeat. So I click on it, I go to Edit, step and repeat. And what I can do is I could just say, how many do I want? And which offset do I want? The vertical, the horizontal, it's totally up to me. Just to be on the safe side, let's make these both 0. I'm going to preview it, and let's just say I want 20 of them. And what I'll do is I want them to vertically go down, so I'm just going to increase the size of the spacing between them. And there's my vertical distance, and that's kind of it. That's how you do it, step and repeat. It's a fantastic way to work in InDesign, so you can see the weight of what a 0.25 looks like versus 0.125. So it's another way to play around, which is pretty cool. All right. Now I've worked with this a little bit. I'm pretty happy. I'm coming to the end of what I liked here. Remember, let's pretend all the pages are set up. You worked really hard and laying it out, and you're happy with it. You could always go back and change things and fix things, especially with paragraph styles and character styles. They look great. Let's pretend all your pages are set up. What you need to do now is you kind of have to look at a pre-flight. And the pre-flight is kind of an idea of like, I'm ready to send it to print, but I got to check it one more time just to be on the safe side. And let me save it just in case. Command S is always good to do over and over. Down here, I see something. I see this little red dot, and it shows me there's some errors. There's some certain errors that InDesign is going to look for you, which is great. So I'm going to double click on this area. I double click, and the pre-flight shows up, which is also under here, window, and output and pre-flight. So it shows me there's some text issues. Normally the pre-flight will look for a few things. It should look for any warnings or issues with your your links. If any of your links are broken or if any of your links are not updated. So it will look for that. It will also help you look for text and see if there's any overset text. Those are the two main ones it looks for. You can actually update these and define new profiles and say, make sure there's CMYK and make sure all this stuff. So, but the main ones are if there's any issues with your links and if there's any overset text. So I'm going to click on this. It shows me, there's 5 issues with overset text and it's on this text frame. So if I click on it, the page number it shows me and it takes me right to it. And it says, yes, there's overset text. Remember that plus sign means overset text. So that's all I have to do is change up the fitting, go to the next one, change up the fitting, go to the next, go to the next. And obviously I would adjust these and make them right. And as soon as I finish the last one, no more red, it's green, no errors, I'm good to go. Great. So now what I can do with my no errors, and let's pretend everything is great, I'm going to make my final print ready PDF. So how do I do that? File, export, Command E. And I'm just going to go to desktop, and that's fine. And I'll probably go to my cookbook because it's the final PDF and go to my final folder, and that's it. So it's a PDF print. That's what I want. And I don't know why it's named that. I'm going to call it CICC. I must have clicked on something earlier. Or I could just call it book. And done. I'm going to say save. Now, make it press quality. So I'm going to click on press quality. I'm going to say all the pages. Now, you can change it to spreads, which I do not want. You're able to actually view the PDF in spreads, which you do not want, but you're able to. I want to see it as individual pages. You always want to view the PDF after exporting. And whether or not you added bleeds and you actually use the bleeds, or if you just have a white border, it'd still be ideal to add in your crop marks to show where it's going to get cut and to show your bleeds that you've already set up at 0.125, eighth of an inch that you've already set up there. So you're good to go. So crop marks are on, your bleed is on, general, you said all, you want pages and you want to view it after, you're done, you press export, that's it. Now let's take a look at the PDF. All right, so I didn't put a cover on, that's fine, we'll look at that later. My table of contents, all this, and now I'm going to look at where potentially these are lined up. So yeah, it's cutting off there, it's cutting off there. My bleeds are set up too. I see it goes over the bleed. Same here. Great. So it's all looking the way it's supposed to look. That's great. But the one thing you might notice, what I'm going to show you now is the PDF that I originally had set up. So this is the PDF I made from the book I showed you earlier. And this is the front cover. So the front cover, once again, engaging, fun, exciting, or at least should dictate what's going to happen, what am I going to see inside the book. So the typography should be very similar, the layout, the style, maybe the pictures, the color palette. There should be similarities from the cover of the book and what's inside. There shouldn't really be too many surprises for the person viewing it. So I use the same pattern throughout. Obviously the pictures that you see here, you're also going to see inside. I use the same typeface throughout, minimum 2 typefaces, no minion, no myriad. Really play around with font pairing, where you're going to have maybe a display typeface for your titles, maybe your headings. You could use the sans serif and your actual body, which I said I was going to use a serif, but I didn't. But a serif, which is more readable and nice to use for body. But what you might notice when you go through this, you're going to notice kind of a situation like this, like, oh, that's weird. Why does that show up? And why are the bleeds like that? And if you continue on, you're like, to the next one, you're going to see, why does this show up? Well, that's the way the PDF is set up. That's what will get cut. But realistically, some of the sheets will be put together and collated in a certain way. The printer will take care of that, and you're good to go. So as you go through it, you double check everything, make sure your page numbers are there, go over the checklist that I've given you to make sure everything's there that you need, to make sure that you've checked off all the things that need to be a part of this. You go through it. And there's a couple things that are also ideal to look at. There's Nicole Zalba right there, phenomenal photographer, great designer. And what I can do is I can do something very simple. Command I or spell check. Please check your spelling. Majority of you might, or in general, if you're using this content, even if you're writing it out yourself, there might be some spelling mistakes. If you're copying content from someone else and you're pasting it in, check the spelling. I don't mark spelling, but for the most part, it should be spelled, grammatically looked over, all that great stuff. You start, and it's going to go through every little thing for you. If there's no issues, there's no issues, but start it off, go through it, fix the things you need to fix. Spell check is very important, and why not, The other thing I want to talk about is line length. So if you have some content here, And let's pretend this isn't here. Let's pretend this is, and it goes, the line length goes all the way. The whole point of the column structure is also to help you control your line length. So this is going to be very hard to read. If someone's reading this, they're going to go from here and they're going to read and read and read and read and read, and then they're going to come here. And because it's structured the way it is, they're probably not going to lose their place. But this becomes harder to read. Now, if the line length is too long, we need to shrink it down. We need to bring it down a little bit. A couple different ways to do that. Obviously the text frame, you push it in, but what you want to do, the general rule of thumb is 40 to 60 characters. So it should be 40 to 60 characters long. Well, how do I see what's 40 to 60 characters long? Well, you could count each individual character, and punctuation and hidden characters, they all count as characters. But a quick way to see how long your line length is, let's bring this over here. Let's pretend it stretches over 3 columns. Okay, let's bring it right there and stretch it to 3 columns. What I like to do is I go to Window and Info. And the info works out really, really well for me, especially in this situation where I can click and drag the longest line I have, including all your characters. And what it shows me is my characters. There's 62 characters in there. So remember, between 40 and 60 characters is like a pretty good line length. 50 is your best. So that's a very comfortable type of reading. So if I brought it in a little bit more, maybe I'll find, but I do want to utilize my column structure the best possible way. There's 52. So actually a 3-column grid with this typeface at this size is actually quite good. Very readable, very nice. Now, of course, you can go back and say, it's still not working and I have the right typeface and right point size. Maybe you need to change up your column structure. There's nothing wrong with that. You can do that anytime by going back to your page and going to your master page and going back to your layout and margins and columns and fixing that up if you needed to. But for the most part, that looked pretty good. So your column structure, your line length is something to keep an eye on. You don't want it to be too short either. If this is too short, and maybe that's too short to read. Actually, it doesn't look too bad, but if I do highlight my longest line and it's 40, actually, that's really good, between 40 and 60 characters. So it's almost, this column structure with my margins and this typeface and this point size is actually between 2 columns and 3 columns. It works pretty good. So ideally, look at your line length, make sure doesn't go all the way. That's one of the worst things you could do. You never really want to do that, that's for sure. Keep an eye on that. Another thing we can do here, I'm going to go back to my original cookbook I had. And what I've done here is I'm done. I'm happy with it. It's great. So instead of going into my organized folder being the InDesign folder with my InDesign file, AI folder with any Illustrator files, PSD folder with any Photoshop stuff, my links folder, all that stuff. What I could do is I could package this. And InDesign will do it for me. It'll bring everything together for me. So I can go to File and Package. What it's going to ask me, well, first it's going to look, are there any missing fonts or any issues? Are any images missing? Are any of them RGB? It's like, no, everything looks good. Everything's linked properly. There's no font issues. Everything's CMYK. Looks great. I'm going to package it. If you do have any issues, you go back and fix them, and then you could package. Well, I do need to save it first. Yeah, not a problem. I will save it. And on my desktop, I'm going to say is where I want this folder to go. All right. What do I want in this folder? Well, do I want to copy the fonts? Yeah, potentially. If I'm sending this to somebody else, another designer to look at, maybe they need to have the fonts because they need to load them in their system. Not a problem. Do I want to copy the linked graphics? Yes, it's going to duplicate all my linked graphics. All my linked vector graphics if I linked in an AI or an EPS. All my linked raster images if I linked in any TIFFs. Do I need to update the graphic links in package? No, because I should have already updated the graphics. Include fonts and links from hidden non-printing content, not necessary. Same with hyphenation exceptions only. It's all good. Include the IDML, just in case, not for me. For me, you don't have to, but just in case, if you're sending this to somebody else, you might want to send the IDML just in case they don't have the latest version of InDesign. Right now, I'm working on Adobe 2023. Maybe they're still working on 2022, 2021, whatever. If you show them the IDML, include it, they can now open that file and it'll open up in any version of InDesign. Include the PDF print. Normally I would say yes, But if you don't have a certain preset set out, it's not going to show you the bleeds and show you the crop marks. So I would say make your own PDF. So right now, that's all I wanted to do is duplicate the InDesign file, copy the fonts, and duplicate and copy in the linked graphics. I'm just going to say package. It's going through the system, the process, and that's it, done. So now if I go to my desktop is where I asked it to save it. There it is. There's the folder. I double click and there it is. There's my fonts that I used. There are all the links and there's the InDesign file. Let me open up the InDesign file, double click. And before I submit, let me make sure that all the links are still linked properly. Yeah, they're all linked. There's no issues. Everything's great. So that's all I have to do now. And I'm going to leave it there. I'm not going to put it in the InDesign folder. If I were to move this or move my links, the links would be broken. And we do not want that. So what I will do is I'm going to go to that PDF that I saved. Here's the original PDF I did save. I'm going to copy that and I'll put it into my linked folder here. Sorry, I'll make a final folder. Great. Paste it in, and there it is. So now my folder is complete. I have my InDesign file, my linked folder, my links all copied and duplicated, my final PDF right there, which is going to go to print exactly as is. And if I need the fonts, I need the fonts, but you do not have to send that to me. If you want to, you can, but not necessary. And that is it. So hopefully this helps you create the cookbook you want, set it up properly the fastest way possible so you can add some great design elements. If we go back and we could take a look at all the different things you could do, which is obviously you do want to put in 10 recipes. This particular book did not have a full 10 recipes, but there's ways to work around that. And make sure that the back cover is a kind of an insightful piece. It's almost becomes like an ad for the cookbook. So let's pretend these are shrink wrapped and I cannot open up the book, meaning the back should be an advertisement to entice somebody to want to read this book. So lay it out in a beautiful way. Once again, utilize the same things you'd use for the front cover, meaning same typefaces, same layout, same style, same pattern, same textures, things like that to keep it all very cohesive and consistent, which will be beautiful. And we'll lay it out in a very nice way. And hopefully you put all that together and it works out for you.